Good evening, everyone. I'd like to remind you, please have your cell phones on vibrate or off, and that we are filming this meeting to be put on YouTube sometime in the next few days. If you do have questions during public comment, I do want to tell you that the camera is like right behind Lenore. You can see that, and it has good speakers on it. Okay, so I just like to remind you of that. Cell phones, and I think we're ready. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the City of Satellite Beach. This is a special meeting of the City Council. The date is June 13th, 2012. The time is approximately 6 p.m., and I'd like you to join me in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We have two things on our agenda. One is we'd like a second reading of ordinance number 1055. We had this on last week, and we had to look at the wordage that we wanted to put on the referendum. So that has been done, so we're going to do that. And then we are going to have interviews of 4 people. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into this. But first I'd like to do the public hearing on ordinance number 1055. Mr. Beadle.
You want me to read the ordinance?
Yes, please.
Ordinance number 1055, an ordinance of the City of Satellite Beach, Brevard County, Florida, calling a referendum election to amend Section 6.03 of the City Charter to create a new provision prohibiting any increase in ad valorem millage rate, amount of non-ad valorem assessment or public service tax rate over prior year's millage rate, non-ad valorem assessment rate or public service rate without the affirmative vote of 4/5 of the City Council, prohibiting imposition of previously not imposed non-ad valorem assessment or public service tax without the affirmative vote of 4/5 of City Council, providing effective date. And that's the second reading of ordinance 1055.
Thank you. Mr. Karate.
I think it would just be easy to read the wording of the referendum question. It was quite convoluted before. It now will read, shall Satellite Beach amend its charter to require a supermajority 4/5 vote to approve any increase in ad valorem millage rate, non-ad valorem assessments, or public service rates in excess of the prior fiscal year, as well as to approve the imposition of new non-ad valorem assessments or public services tax rates. Very straightforward language.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the council.
Wording is good?
I think so. Mr. Beadle, thanks for the help with that.
Thanks.
And the word should be vote, not votes after the...
Right.
Right.
Right. Just can't...
Just take the S off.
The line through shows this.
Oh, is it in?
Yeah, it's line through there.
Okay.
The S is line through.
Okay.
Okay, prior fiscal year, current was crossed out and prior, so that means prior fiscal year is last year's fiscal year rate. So we don't want to come up with a rate this year that was higher than last year's or the current year. I think it's what we're in.
Yeah.
Like right now we're in.
But the prior fiscal year, I assumed, when we were talking about the wording, meant like next year's going to be FY13, FY12's value, which is the prior fiscal year for that year that we're talking about.
Because I don't read that. I read because
Read
we set the millage rate. We set a tentative millage rate next month.
So you read 2011 as the prior.
So it would be what we're in. We couldn't go below this. I think not what it was last year. I see what you're saying. It depends when we set the millage rate. We'll set a tentative millage rate, and then we'll set the millage rate itself.
But the millage rate is for FY13. So the prior fiscal year would be FY12. Is that correct, Mr. Beadle?
That's how I would read it.
Okay, I just want to make sure it doesn't. I just want us to know that because prior fiscal year to me is last year. And this could act, could not be what we want to achieve from this.
Can you think of clarification without stringing it out again?
Currently,
Currently in effect?
The then current.
In excess
yeah, of the current rate.
of the rate currently in effect?
Yeah.
Without
Yeah, but what if it goes down, then you're, I don't know.
This is only the increase.
It's a
This only
fiscal
addresses
year versus a year.
Right. You drop it.
You can always go down.
Right, we decided that increase was what we're working
Okay.
on. Right. So we wouldn't have to have a second reading if we just changed that line, right?
No.
So can we change it to in excess of
The amount currently imposed.
the current rate? In excess of the current millage rate?
No, the current rate, because
Of the
you're
current
talking
rate, because we're
about.
talking the other rates too, yeah.
Correct,
In excess of the current rate, would that work?
I like that.
Okay.
Okay.
And the current rate, so you take out prior fiscal year?
Yes.
Hey, that's good.
That's even shorter.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
We good? All right, I'd like to open this agenda item for public comment. Is there any public comment? Thank you. I'd like to bring it back to the council for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that the council adopt ordinance 1055 as written and amended.
For second reading.
Okay, second reading.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. You need to make that same change in the potential, in the text of it on section 5 as well. That same modification was made. So the motion needs to include that as well.
Okay, amendments to both the ordinance as written and the language, on the referendum language for the ballot.
Okay. And that's section 5, 2,
Sub 2, E little 2, yeah.
little 2. All right.
I'll second it.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilman Billman, seconded by Councilwoman Dean. Lenore?
Councilman French,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rhodes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Dean.
Yes.
Councilman Billman.
Yes.
Mayor Fontaine.
Yes, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you. The next is agenda item number 4, which is the interviews for interim city manager. I would like to let the audience know that last night the council met at 5 o'clock with a special meeting. We had 12 applicants for the position of full-time interim city manager applications. From those 12, we discussed each one, and the council came up with public comment with 4 finalists. So the 4 finalists we called, and also the people who did not make the cut we called, and asked the finalists to come tonight. They are Robert Bartolotta, Anne Marie Salmonson, Kenneth Fields, and Kathleen Margolis. Those are the 4. They are all here. We are going to conduct a discussion with each person, approximately 15 minutes. We have a series of questions that we would like to ask, and then to go into a discussion. After the 4 people are interviewed and the council still has not made a decision, we will not make a decision, we will open it for public comment. At that time, we would ask for public comment. Just reference the applicants, just the agenda item. Special meeting, you can only talk about the agenda item that's in play, which are the interviews. After your comments, we'll come back and the city council will decide, will make recommendations, discussion to appoint or to 1 or possibly 2 people with a backup, and then we'll discuss the salaries and things like that before we make a decision. Then we'll make a decision, vote on it, and then come up with a interim city manager. Sounds like it's a good process. I think it'll work. And like I said last night, it's been a long time. Each one of us is breaking new ground. This seems to work. I've discussed it with the city manager. And I think we're ready to start. Yes, thank you. We are going to do this in alphabetical order. So the first one would be Mr. Robert J. Bartolotta. I will discuss with the council. I'm going to ask question number 7 first. And then 7, 9, 1, 2, 3, and 8. That's the way the rest I'm going to try and do. 7, 9, 1, 2, 3, and 8.
The sixth question?
So I'm going to ask that as part of the, good evening, sir. I'm going to ask that as part of the introduction. Sir? First candidate for interview is Mr. Robert J. Bartolotta. Sir, you like Bob? Or?
Either way.
Okay. Thank you.
Fine.
Thank you for coming to the city of Satellite Beach today. And I'd like to introduce the council first. I think you've met us. Joe Ferrante, the mayor, Councilman Lloyd French, Councilman Greg Billman, Councilwoman Cheryl Deanan, and Vice Mayor Scott Rhodes. Sir, we're going to have a discussion about 15 minutes. And we'd like to ask you several questions, and then if we have some time to just ask you some other questions if we could. At that time, after that, we're going to have public comment. We'll bring it back to the council, but you'll be able to leave after your interview, if you like. With that in mind, I think we're ready to get started. If we could you, and to put you at ease, could you please give us some information about yourself, your credentials, your most recent position, and then your reason for leaving that position, sir?
Okay. Well, I have a master's degree in public administration from the University of Southern California, a bachelor's degree in political science from California State University in Fullerton, and I'm also a graduate of the John F. Kennedy Harvard University Senior Executives Program, which was an intense program for senior level executives. My most recent position was city manager of Sarasota for the last 4.5 years. I left my position in January, and I have about 35 years of experience throughout the country, about 9 years in the state of Florida. Reasons for leaving, we did have a change in commission. It's a commission instead of a council, but it's the same difference. The commission changed in May of last year, and 3 out of the 5 commissioners were new, and the 2 incumbents had 2 years of experience. So we had a brand new commission in May, and they had a different philosophy from the previous commission. The previous commission had a number of initiatives such as downtown parking meters, reform police pensions, a lot of different controversial issues. And the new commission did not have the same feeling on some of those. And as any city manager will tell you, you carry out the will of the majority of the commission. So if the commission says go right, you go right. If they say go left, and many times the city manager is identified with those positions and becomes kind of a lightning rod. So that's the basic reason, is they wanted to change. One of the commissioners actually was endorsed by the police union, and they worked very hard for his election because we were trying to change the police pension, and he was elected. That's the background. The reason of the event that took place in January, there was an allegation that there were emails missing from my computer, and the IT department did an investigation and they found nothing unusual by it. The auditor then hired a consultant who looked at deleted emails for the last 6 months, and deleting emails is part of my everyday job. I have 100,000 emails a year, and most of them are spam or meeting notices. So deleting email is no big deal, because the assumption is that it's all backed up on the file server. Well, the consultant found that there were 100 emails that he couldn't find on the file server. So the commission said, oh, something must be wrong, and they turned it over to law enforcement for an investigation. Since that time, 5 months ago, The consultant has concluded that the IT department may not have been doing the Microsoft Exchange updates in a timely manner, and that might have been the reason. I believe in the council manager form of government. I don't believe the council needs a reason if they want to change. That was the reason given at the time. There was a motion to terminate me. The motion failed, and we worked out a mutually agreeable separation. So I left. I resigned essentially and received the severance.
Thank you, sir. And I do have a series of 6 questions I'd like to ask you. I'd just like to inform you that for the last couple of months, we have been filming our council meetings and putting them on YouTube. So it won't be, it'll be on like the next couple of days. So just, and I have briefed the people in the audience also on that. Sir, I have a series of questions. These are from the council. I'd like to ask them to you, and then you can answer them. Question number 1. We are the second highest millage rate in Brevard County. This council has committed to reducing taxes and maintaining appropriate levels of service. How do you feel about the decision about making cuts across the board within the city and setting an appropriate millage rate?
Well, I think that's probably one of the biggest priorities that a commission faces is what is the level of taxation in that community. In Sarasota, over the last 5 years, we reduced the millage rate 41% from the rollback rate. 41%. In other words, if we had adopted the rollback rate for the last 5 years, it would have been 41% more revenue. So we have an aggregate millage rate today of about 3. So that's our millage rate. On the other hand, there's a lot of taxable value too. It's almost $7 billion worth of taxable value, but that's down from $10 billion 5 years ago. So that's a 30% reduction, and we have every year we have reduced the budget. To be honest with you, I don't personally like across the board. I'll tell you, I'm just going to be real honest with you. I believe that you have to make selective cuts, and you have to look at the service levels that the commission and the community want to live with. We reduced the workforce from 777 employees down to 595, which was a 25% reduction in workforce. But we looked at every single position, and we looked, and some departments have a lot more fat than others. And when you do across the board, what happens is you punish those that have been very efficient. And so I don't like across the board. Now, once you get everybody into an efficient state, then you know, everybody has to live with the same, whether it's wages or benefits. Those have to be across the board.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to skip question number 2 right now and go to 3. What is your view of the relationship of efficiency with municipal government?
Oh, I think that's the number one goal, is to provide efficient services and effective. In other words, unfortunately, efficiency and effectiveness are sometimes dealt with separately. They have to be dealt with together. I think the biggest difficulty that municipalities have is expectations of the public. The public wants lower cost government, but connecting lower cost government with service levels is a very difficult task. And I applaud this city for engaging the public in your efficiency studies, because that's kind of unheard of, to bring the staff and the public together to look at areas in the future. But, you know, a lot of people moan and groan because of the economy over the last 5 years, but in some respects it was a godsend, because it allowed us to really look at our operations and get efficient, and allowed us to get rid of some dead wood. It allowed us to get rid of some marginal operations. It allowed us to get rid of some services that really didn't make sense. We had twice-a-week refuse collection. Nobody has twice-a-week refuse collection. And we do. Well, I'm sorry for that. Okay. But not everyone has twice-a-week. But on the other hand, if the community wants twice a week and is willing to pay for it, well, then that's fine. What we find normally, though, is the community doesn't want to pay for it, but wants the higher level of service. And that's always as long as you're transparent and as long as you're educating the public as to what, but we did reduce service levels. There was many things that we had 47 people in our landscape crew. We now have 25 people in that landscape crew. Does that mean the grass is going a little bit higher? Yes. Does that mean that the planting beds are not as maintained? Yes. But that's what the public wants.
Thank you, sir. Next question. What is your experience with Florida Statute 163, community redevelopment, and CRAs in general?
Well, I have, in both Florida communities, both the town of Jupiter, I was instrumental in creating the CRA for the town of Jupiter, and I was the executive director of the CRA. And in Sarasota, I was the executive director of the CRA, and I was instrumental in expanding that into a second area. So I'm very familiar with tax increment financing and what you can do with CRAs and what you can't do. Now, in both of those cases, the city council served as the board of directors for the CRA. The city manager served as executive director. The city attorney was. So it did not have its own staff, but it had its own set of books. It had its own legal entity. And in Sarasota, the CRA has existed for about 25 years. So it's, and I have to tell you, the first 10 years was negative revenue. So it's, and you have to be very careful with CRAs because no one anticipated the last 5 years where your tax base actually goes down. And we were very sensitive in Sarasota not to load up the CRA with too much debt because on a down economy, those property values go down, and you've got to be able to service that debt.
Sir, next question. Are you aware of the JLAC letter that was sent to the city regarding the allocation and transfer of funds, a CRA question, from the CRA trust fund to the general fund to pay for police and fire salaries and benefits? We got a letter from the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee. And if you are familiar with that, what are your thoughts regarding the long-term repayment of these funds back to the general fund?
I have not read the letter, but I am familiar with the issue. It's been our philosophy in the past that you can charge general fund, the general fund can charge CRAs for services provided, but only to the extent that those services are over and above the normal citywide services. And the example I would give you, in Sarasota, we have police patrols throughout the city. The CRA is the downtown area of the city, and they wanted a higher level of service. They wanted walking patrols. So the city commission and the CRA board felt that that was a legitimate expense for the CRA to pay for that level of service which was over and above. So they weren't paying for just normal service. They were paying only for the level of service that was over and above. I don't know enough about what this letter said, but in Sarasota and in Jupiter, it was not unusual to charge the CRA for services rendered by the general fund. Another example would be if we had a full-time planner on the city staff that worked about 70% of his time on CRA projects. So we charged his salary through the CRA. So I think legitimate expenses are fine. I don't know enough about what was charged or what wasn't charged, but I have to look at it a little bit carefully.
Thank you, sir. I have two more questions. What do you foresee will be the challenges Satellite Beach will face in the next few months with the budget process?
Well, I've listened to some of your council meetings on tape and on YouTube, and the impression I got was that the budget was in pretty good shape this year because I think property values have kind of stabilized a bit. I looked at your budget. I've not looked at your proposed budget for next year, but I have looked at the budget, and I understand from the finance director the comments that she made to the city council was that it was getting there and it was in pretty good shape. I don't know what it looks like, so I don't know. But budget is obviously one of the most important things facing you in the next month because you've got to set a tentative millage by the end of July.
Yes, sir, we do. Sir, last question and then open discussion. What is your salary and benefit expectations during your tenure with the city?
Well, I put in my letter that I believe that I could negotiate a package that was slightly less than the current manager. Obviously, I've done a little bit of homework on that, and I've done a little bit of driving around the community this afternoon and looking at what rentals are possible, and I think my expectation would be for a salary of $2,600 a week. And I'm not looking for any health care, no car allowance, no pension. I would like to have the city provide a smartphone or a cell phone allowance, one or the other. And that's it. No other compensation. I would like the ability to flex my time if in other words, I'm a pretty strong workaholic. You will find that I will work in excess of 60 hours, but if I want to leave early on a Friday because I have to travel back to my home or come in a little late on Monday, I want to be able to flex those hours. I would expect normal holiday pay if that. Okay. And if it comes out to be a 6-month duration, I would request a day and a half of vacation accrual per month. Day and a half. And again, I think you'll get your money's worth with me. If you hire me, you will find that I'm here all the time.
Sir, I thank you for the comments. I'd like to open this for the council for questions, and then I will give you a minute or so to wrap up.
Okay.
Council?
I have a question. What is your availability to start?
I would have to find housing. I think I could start work within a week from tomorrow. Okay. In other words, I think it would take me about a week to arrange some temporary housing and move over here. So I would propose, if I'm selected, that I would start a week from tomorrow.
And then one additional question. It's my understanding from the residents that they're interested in soliciting a permanent city manager through an extensive selection process. And do you understand that this position may be an interim position and most likely not going to become a full-time position?
Yes, I understand it's an interim position, and my expectation would be is that if you're pleased with my work and I'm pleased with the community, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, whether I would be an applicant or not. I have no expectation at this point. I'm looking for a maximum 6 months at this point.
Thanks, sir. Any other council questions?
I had a quick one. You mentioned 41% reduction in the millage rate, I think, in the last year, couple of years.
That's 5 years.
5 years. Generally, can you summarize kind of how you went about that? Did you make some?
Well, you can't cut 24% of your workforce out, and we maximized revenues. We initiated more user fees. We cut everything you can imagine, line by line by line. There were many, many things that we were used to doing. If you walk through the city buildings now, you'll find empty offices in every single city building. I laid off my own secretary and took a 30% cut in my own office. So just across the board, everywhere you could imagine was cut. We cut we laid off police captains and planners and some very sensitive positions. We cut out 5 department heads. We went from 13 department heads to 8 department heads.
You must have got some reaction to that in the community.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I got a pretty thick skin though. I was hired in 2007 when the economy was booming, so no one told me what was instead. But you got to do what's right, and if you take heat, you take heat.
Okay. Thank you.
To dovetail on that, sir, have you had an opportunity yet to read the Citizens Advisory Panel for Efficient Government report?
I have.
And what's your take on some of the suggestions that were in there? Would that assist you in doing your job?
Well, I think it's a good starting point, and there were many, many recommendations that said this needs further discussion. I like the idea of including the citizens and the department heads. You've got some really highly sensitive issues in that report that will take a lot more consensus building, especially when you deal with certain ones, for instance, in the police and fire. Those will need to be worked through the collective bargaining. Those will need, and frankly, will need a lot more citizen consensus, because those are pretty drastic changes being put forward. They're very ambitious. But I think it's a very good starting point. It could be a good roadmap for discussion. So I think I'm not aware of any city that has been that comprehensively engaged, the departments and the citizens, which is a very positive.
Thank you.
Mr. Bartolotta, if we were to go back to your last city manager position and ask the city commission to describe perhaps one of your strengths and maybe an area where they might consider you challenged, what might they tell us?
That I'm a pretty hard driving person, that they might say that I don't engage enough with the community. And I would take issue with that because I spend a lot of time out in the community, and that's one of my favorite parts. They would say I'm a very tough and decisive person that's willing to tackle the hard issues. The challenging part would be more that I need to get out more in the community.
Thank you.
Sir, I've just been asked, did you say there was an investigation done, and is there a status? Has that been, is that closed?
The commission turned over, they had a consultant who said there were some missing emails. And the commission said, well, let's turn that over to law enforcement, which they did.
Right.
In 5 months, I've heard nothing. The consultant has updated the city commission on 2 or 3 occasions and said, we've stopped looking for those things. We're concentrating on fixing the update issues and moving on.
It was just from the paper, and of course, it's the paper, so. But one of the papers I read said something about an ongoing federal investigation.
There was,
there such a,
it was not an investigation of me, but let me tell you what
okay.
happened. There was an audit done on a community development fund. And what happened was the city was funding a youth program, okay? And the city required receipts from that youth program before they reimbursed them. So the youth program gave the receipts to the city reimbursed them. Unbeknownst to the city, the youth program was also billing the state for the same hours, okay? Once we found out about that, I personally brought the police in. I personally notified the HUD Inspector General, and we believe that they double billed. It was about a $5,000 double billing. But the city had receipts for every expenditure. But we called in the HUD IG, and we believe there was double billing on the part of
So that was the investigation?
Yes, yes.
Sir, I thank you very much for coming. Any final quick comments?
In these days of internet and Google, I have to put something on the record that is uncomfortable, but I want to put it on there because when I was the town manager of Jupiter 9 years ago, my wife was very ill, and she was in the hospital for nearly 6 months. During that period of time, there was a false allegation made against me by a clerk in the hospital that I struck my wife. My wife denied that it occurred. I denied that it occurred. My daughter denied. It was turned over to the state for investigation and the state attorney. There were no charges filed. There was no indictment. There was no arrest. But it's in Google. When I interviewed for the Sarasota job, I did not bring this up because it didn't happen. Later, the newspapers got wind of it, and it caused a little bit of a scandal. I want you to know about that right now because it's out there in Google. So if the newspaper person says it was 9 years ago, it did not happen, but I want to be straight with you so that just full disclosure.
Thank you very much, sir, and thank you for coming this evening. and
Thank
spending
you.
some time with us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Our next person to be interviewed would be Mr. Kenneth Fields of Boca Raton. That was a little longer than 15 minutes, but I think that was about right.
There you go.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hey, Scott Brothers, nice to meet you. Good. Good.
Good evening, sir, and welcome to the city of Satellite Beach. I'd like to introduce the council. I am Mayor Joe Ferrante, Councilman Lloyd French, Councilman Greg Billman, Councilwoman Cheryl Deenan, Vice Mayor Scott Rhodes. Sir, we would like to have approximately a 15-minute discussion with you, and would like to ask you several questions that we'll ask each candidate tonight, and then have a discussion. After that, we are going to have public comment, and then the council will make a decision. You do not have to stay for that after you leave here, and we will contact you sometime either this evening or tomorrow, sir. All right, thank you. I do want to let you know that we do have, this is on YouTube, be shown probably tomorrow or the day after. With that in mind, sir, we're ready to get started. Sir, if you could give us some information about yourself, your credentials, your most recent position, and your reason for leaving that position. Thank you.
I've been in the public sector for a little over 30 years now. I have worked in the private sector as well. I started with the city of Pittsburgh. I was budget director there for a number of years. Left to go into the private sector as a management consultant to state and local governments, nonprofits based in Washington, D.C. Ended up nationally being the national government budgeting representative for what was then Arthur Young and Company. Left the private sector, or left management consulting, when I was asked to return to Pittsburgh to take a position as business manager of a research institute at Carnegie Mellon University, their Software Engineering Institute, which was a federally funded research and development center. Did that, but missed government. I had been out of it at that point for a while, and had an opportunity to go to Florida, become the budget director for the city of Hollywood, Florida. Was there for 7, almost 8 years, became the assistant city manager over budget, a number of other departments, information technology, human resources, etc. Also served as their chief labor negotiator. Left there to take probably the most interesting government job you can have in the state of Florida. I was essentially the tribal manager for the Seminole Tribe of Florida. The Seminole Tribe is a government. They provide all the local government services of any municipality, plus the services of a county, plus even some state government services. A 130-person police department, a 70-person fire department, 7 reservations from Tampa to Hollywood across the state. But I was eventually replaced by a tribal member, a woman I had actually hired and mentored and trained, which was their right, which is rather understandable. And as you might have heard, they're doing very, very well, thank you, with gaming, providing all their revenues. So it's the only government job where I had a Gulfstream jet at my disposal if I had to go to Tallahassee. It'll never happen again. So after I left the tribe, I spent 2.5 years in Isla Mirada in the Florida Keys, sports fishing capital of the world. Great place to be. They have their council of 2-year terms. They turn over every 2 years. I was hired by one council to accomplish a very specific purpose, which was to get sewers built, which the Keys do not have. And then 2 years later, a council came in that didn't want sewers built. And as a result of that, we agreed to part ways. I briefly took a job in Southwest Ranches in Broward County. They said they wanted a strong professional manager. They got a strong professional manager, and when they got one, they realized that's not what they wanted. It became very clear that what they wanted and what my expectations of the job were not matching up, and it was better for both of us if we agreed to separate after a short period of time. Accomplished a lot, got staff turned around that had been kind of demoralized there, but it wasn't going to work out on a long-term basis, so I voluntarily left.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Sir, I have like 6 questions, and then we'll come back to the council for a discussion. Okay, the first question. Satellite Beach is the 2nd highest millage rate in Brevard County. This council has committed to reducing taxes and maintaining appropriate levels of services. How do you feel about the difficult decision about making cuts across the board within the city and setting an appropriate millage rate?
I think when you say cuts across the board, I think that as a former budget director, the idea of just telling every department to arbitrarily reduce their budget by a certain amount is really, it's the meat axe approach, and it's usually not going to be very effective. I think what you need to do if you really want to talk about reducing millage, which means you're going to have to adjust services at some point, you've got to, one, get a very clear sense of priority from you, the council, as to what are the priority services you want to deliver. And then once that's identified, you can now start going after your budget with a scalpel and identifying those areas where the lowest priority services can be eliminated or reduced, maintaining the most important ones. And every department, there's something that they do now that, while it's great to do, it's nice to do, it's not something that's absolutely necessary. And that can range from, I think almost every fire department wants to put out a hurricane preparedness brochure, and it's not a big expenditure, but I can probably find 5 other major organizations, from the county TV stations to the newspapers, that'll do a hurricane preparedness guide. Our fire department doesn't have to do one, and that's, I'm not sure whether yours does or not, but that's the kind of example of something that, things that are nice to do. It's nice to have the town, the city logo on it, but is it absolutely necessary? And I think the same thing holds true even in the police department. Again, services that are currently offered, they're nice to have, they're great, but are they absolutely necessary in the current economic environment? They can be restored later if revenues come back and the desire to have that service comes back. Parks and Recreation, same thing, lots of things we offer. And the other thing, of course, is to look at, are there better ways of doing the same thing? Grounds maintenance, building maintenance is one of those things where, again, having your own employees is always the best way in terms of being able to get quick response, but very often you can privatize a lot of those services because there are so many companies out there doing the identical kind of work in the private sector, whether it be grounds maintenance or building maintenance, that you can get competitive bids in a market where everyone's looking for work. They're going to be very, very competitive, and you get the same service for a reduced cost. So again, it's all a question of the priorities that the council wants to set, that the manager then wants to follow through and implement.
Thank you, sir. Second question. What is your view of the relationship of efficiency with municipal government?
It's the goal of any organization to be as efficient as possible. I think we owe it to our citizens, we owe it to the taxpayers, to the people who generate the revenue, to show that the money is being spent effectively and efficiently, that you're getting the most bang for the buck. I think the biggest problem sometimes that we run into is that by its very nature, government can be inefficient at times through no fault of its own, but because higher levels of government have imposed requirements on us that make it necessary to, the classic one, I think, is purchasing, where very often we have to go out and get bids or get quotes based on dollar levels of authority that have been issued. And, we went out and we'll buy a new computer, we do it on bids, we get them come in from Dell or HP or whatever, and gee, the day we buy them, you find out that Best Buy has the exact same computer on sale on a special deal for about $100 or $200 less. But, I can't just run down to Best Buy and go buy it because the procurement code says, those are the kinds of inefficiencies. The things that we do to make sure that government does not favor people, does not spend money, you don't direct things to favored vendors, sometimes prevents us from taking advantage of things that in the private sector you can be much more responsive to. It's very frustrating. It's frustrating for the general public to understand. It's frustrating as a manager that you can't do things. So, but it's, you got to strive. You've got to constantly negotiate with vendors, push for the best pricing you can get. Keep your eye out for when that sale does occur and call up Best Buy corporate and say, wait a second, can you give us that price that you're offering to the general public on a corporate basis, and do the same kind of thing. Take advantage of them when they come along. And you've got to sensitize all of your staff to that fact, as opposed to just picking up the phone and calling the usual guys and getting quotes that they've always given you.
Thank you, sir. Next two questions are on CRAs. What is your experience with Florida Statute 163, community redevelopment, and CRAs in general?
It's been a little while between the tribe and being in the Keys where we didn't have them, but when I was in Hollywood, we had a downtown CRA, and then while I was in Hollywood, we created the beach CRA, the second one. So I have considerable experience in setting up CRAs, and I'm not 100% on top of all the changes in the law that might have occurred over the last few years, but I know exactly how they operate or what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to be funded and how you're supposed to segregate what they're doing from the general government purposes. So in general, I've got, like I said, Hollywood all those years, there was a lot of experience with that. So it's something that, like I say, it wouldn't take me very long to get back up to speed on any minor changes that have occurred in the most recent past, but I'm used to working with them in a cooperative manner and negotiating with the CRA to make sure it stays intact and in line with what the city's priorities are.
Thank you, sir. With that question, are you aware of the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee letter, the JLAC, that was sent to the city regarding the allocation and transfer of funds from the CRA trust fund to the general fund to pay for police and fire salaries and benefits since 2003? What are your thoughts regarding the long-term repayment of these funds back to the general fund?
Repayment to the general fund or repayment to the CRA?
Back to the general.
CRA. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm aware, as I said, that's one of the tensions that exist between CRAs and local governments as to what is a proper expenditure of CRA funds for basic government services. And the rule is usually in the past was you can supplement, you can't replace. I think the two approaches I would want to take as a manager, and I just became aware of that letter very briefly this morning, and I don't know the details of it, but just based on my general experience with CRAs and local governments, the first thing is to really to look at the findings of the Joint Legislative Committee and see are they accurate or do they reflect the reality? Was the city in fact using this as a supplemental funding source, or is it providing basic services? And that can become especially difficult in a time of downturn, where if you're reducing services and you're using that funding to maintain services as opposed to cutting them, I think you can make a very strong argument that it's not in fact an improper use, that was a proper use of the funding. Over the longer term, if disputing the issue with the state results in a finding that you will have to repay them over the long term, then I think you've got to look at a long-term payment plan that basically maintains the financial health of the general government operations, maintains the level of services, and at the same time makes the CRA whole and makes the CRA, again, finding ways to have the CRA perhaps, again, supplement services to maybe offset some of the impacts of that repayment on the general fund by doing some things that maybe the local government can no longer do because it now has to make those payments. You get into that issue again of cutbacks versus supplements, and I think a lot of arguments can be made that basically maintaining when you're cutting back is not supplanting money, it's in fact maintaining services that otherwise would have been cut.
Thank you, sir. I have two more questions. What do you foresee will be the challenges that Satellite Beach will face in the next few months with the budget process?
Like all governments, I mean, there's been a very small increase that's been announced for your property values, 2.3%, which is, relatively, at least it's a positive number for a change, which is a good news, I suppose. Without looking at detail in the financial, the biggest issues is costs overall, employee benefit and pension costs, personnel costs in general, which is the biggest component of any local government, are the things that have to be looked at most closely. Your CAPEG report identified those. There's a number of fringe benefit areas that need to be looked at, and again, governments all across the country are doing that now. The public sector is a lot of things have been there for a long, long time and never were questioned, and now are being questioned, and I think it's a new reality for everyone to deal with in terms of local government. We do ask a lot of our public employees. We do ask a lot of the dedication, and for them, as somebody once said, when the storm's coming, everybody else is evacuating, and you're asking them to stay at their posts. But on the other hand, it's a different world out there in terms of the employment markets, and that's probably one of the biggest areas that's going to have to be looked at. Hopefully energy costs will stay down, or at least lower, and we won't see the kind of spike we saw in the last year. Most other costs are staying relatively level, I think, for the upcoming year. So the big challenge is going to be how do we handle our personnel costs and our personnel numbers and deal with that in the future and build a sound foundation to go forward.
Thank you, sir. My last question, and then I'll open it. What is your salary and benefit expectations during your tenure with the city? I
think I proposed in my letter to basically $20,000 a month, excuse me, $10,000 a month, not $10,000 a month, and no other benefits. I mean, as an interim manager, I wouldn't expect any retirement. I can provide my own health insurance over the short term. So as an interim position, I think that would be appropriate to basically just say a flat dollar amount. No allowances, no car, no cell phone or anything else. It's an interim position, and I can understand I wouldn't expect those other kinds of things to go with it. If it changes in the future, then we have a chance to sit down and re-talk about some of those things.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to bring it back to the council for just a few questions, and then I'll give you a minute to wrap up, okay?
Yeah, I do. Did you have the opportunity to drive around the city today? When you
Yes, I did. I got a chance to sort of get a quick tour this afternoon and up and down a couple of your main roads.
And what is your availability? When would you be able to start?
As soon as I can find housing up in the area.
Okay. And again, I stated this before, and you understand that this is an interim position that most likely may not become a full-time position?
I understand that, and I would expect under those circumstances that if the council would also understand is while I would serve as interim, I would probably keep applications in other places potentially.
Okay. I think that's it.
Thank you. Other council questions? Scott?
Do you have some experience with trimming some costs and stuff with the cities and things like that? A lot of your tenure was during the good economic times.
Well, when I was out at Islamorada, I mean, it was obvious that's when the downturn became, and we got very creative. We cut staff, we combined positions, we reorganized to give supervisors more responsibility and cut out some middle management levels. One of the creative things we did was a neighboring community lost their fire chief, or he retired, and we actually split our fire chief. We contracted with them, and our chief served 2 municipalities, which he could do as a chief, and we each paid 50% of the salary, which worked out pretty well for us and for them in the short term. We looked at other ways of providing, we were working very hard at looking at ways to combine with other governments to provide services, or at least pool, reduce our health insurance costs by getting a bigger market to buy health insurance, things of that nature, gasoline, all those kinds of things, working cooperatively with other governments. I mean, that's one big area of opportunity that, a smaller municipality like this, sometimes the economies of scale, if you go into a buying co-op with other governments, you can reduce some of your costs by doing that kind of thing. But the big thing, like I said, personnel costs are always going to be the single biggest cost of a local government. And anytime you can reorganize, reduce middle management, not that there is a whole lot here to begin with, but ask people to, like I said, combine 2 positions, take advantage of retirements or departures for any reason, and then compensate people appropriately if they're really stepping up their responsibility, but ask them to do more and with fewer people.
Thank you.
You want to go? Sir, understanding your discussion with regard to leaving the tribal government experience, and I commend you. I think training and replacement is what we're all supposed to do throughout life. So good on you for doing that. But I do have to ask you. I mean, it's the elephant in the room. Everybody can Google it, et cetera, on the village manager position as well as the Southwest Ranchers position. I read that there were some council members. I understand your point about every 2 years that the folks came in and left, and they do come in with different concepts that they want executed. But there were some council members who were quoted as saying that if you hadn't left, there were there were potential for litigation that could have cost the city. In other words, if you wouldn't have entered into an agreement to leave, that they were, I guess, considering terminating you. That's the way that I read that.
You're talking about Islamorada, I assume?
At the village manager?
Yeah, village manager.
Is that Islamorada?
That's Islamorada. As I said, there was a different council. They wanted to go in a different direction. I had a contract that had 6 months left to go. Litigation, I don't think ever really raised its head. The only question was in terms of if they let me go for no cause, I was entitled to so much severance, and that's in fact basically what I got, was what the contract provided for at that point. The only issue of litigation would have been if it attempted to fire me for cause. Obviously, I would have fought that because there was no cause. There was no grounds for any kind of termination on that basis, and that's probably why I think that issue might have come up with litigation.
Okay, that was just a quote in the
paper,
and it's
I understand.
And there was another quote from a councilman that said that or Councilwoman, I can't remember which, that she or he made the point that you provided selective information to council. That was one of their issues.
Yeah, but some of the council, my approach was I would meet with every council member before every council meeting, and I was available to do that. Some council members availed themselves of that. Some council members chose not to. If a council member didn't, I would try to approach them and say, you know, I would brief them on every single item that was going to be coming up on the agenda, both pros and cons and things of that nature. But if a council member chose basically to ignore that opportunity, there's nothing I could do about that.
Okay, I got you. Quick temper, that was another quote.
I don't have a quick temper. I mean,
you're not taking quick temper with me, so that's
no.
Okay,
I will admit to this, and this is I've been known to suck with fools badly at times. Okay.
So have I.
All right.
Okay. The follow-on job at Southwest Ranches. I noticed that there was a quote in there that problems began 3 months into your tenure there, immediately after leaving the village manager position. And there were quotes in there about not being friendly, that you increased salaries without advising council. So there again, that went back to the selective information, and you can see why you would.
I think two things. I think I came into Southwest Ranches right after Broward County had adopted probably one of the strictest ethics codes in the state, and when the town had just adopted a brand new procurement code, which they had not had before. The procurement code required us to go out and get bids and quotes on things, and a lot of this was a place that very much, well, give it to so-and-so and things. So when I started tightening up that process, a lot of people locally started getting upset because sometimes they weren't the lowest bidder. And in the past, they would have been getting a lot of those kinds of projects anyway, but suddenly, so that was one thing. The second thing was the ethics code required, for example, everybody who came into town hall had to sign in and be registered as who are they visiting and what was the topic of their visit and things of that nature. And a lot of people, again, in a town that had been very informally run, this was viewed as very bureaucratic. You know, the new town hall was designed before I got there, but it had electronic door locks, so people had to be buzzed in after you had signed in and that kind of stuff. And again, in a place that previously had been operating out of a group of trailers where anybody could walk in at any time during business hours. After business hours, is surrounded by a chain link fence with barbed wire on it. But the new town hall didn't have that. But the doors were locked so that you couldn't just go walking around the offices during non-business hours. So a lot of people viewed that as being, quote, unfriendly to the community. I made anybody who came to town hall and wanted to meet with me, I always met with. I was told to everybody, I'm accessible to the council 24/7. Any citizen who wants to meet with me, I will attend any homeowners association or any other meeting of that kind that anybody wants to attend. Both in Isla Mirada, I was at Rotary, I was at the Chamber of Commerce, I was at any kind of group that would want me to hear what I have to say. I mean, I'll be there. I mean, I'm not running for office, so I don't have to go out and solicit those kinds of appearances. But I think it's good for the manager to be out in the community, be accessible. If somebody wants him to speak, to make himself available or herself available to show up at these kinds of meetings, and I would do that on request anytime. But I'm not running for office.
Thank you. Lloyd, do you have a question?
If we were to go back to Southwest Ranches or Isla Mirada and ask a council or commission to describe one of your strengths in perhaps an area where you are challenged, what might they tell us?
Strengths are decisiveness. I mean, I'm willing to make hard decisions, and that ranges from I'm going to fire people if they have to be fired. I'm willing to, tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. I think those are good qualities. I think that, like I said, a strong professional manager should have, and I think everybody would agree with that I'm capable of doing that. The downside is that, like I said, sometimes I tell people what they need to hear instead of what they want to hear, and not everybody likes that. Some people would like to be sort of me to sugarcoat some things sometimes, and sometimes that can be viewed as being brusque. Sometimes that can be viewed as being, not, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. I think it's, like you said, not giving all the information. Well, sometimes the information I'm giving you, you don't want to hear it. You think I'm withholding something, and that sometimes will happen. I think some people say that. But I think if you talk to the mayors in both of those communities, they will tell you that they thought I was a very, very good manager. I worked well with them. I think that if you talk to, I mean, I can give you references out in the community in Islamorada that will tell you that, you know, they were sorry to see me go, and the politics of the situation were such that I left, but it was not really, like I said, they would love to have me back if it was possible to do that kind of thing. The other thing is I said, I believe very strongly in no matter what the circumstances, in building staff. And you know, taking your people and making them better, making them more effective, making them more efficient. So when you champion staff sometimes, especially in the current atmosphere, I mean, I'm willing, like I said, I'm willing to fire people, I'm willing to cut salaries, benefits, things like that if necessary. But as a manager, they're my team. They're the people that I count on to actually do the work on a day-to-day basis. And my experience has been in the current environment, there were some people that, you know, public employees have been made the whipping boy for a lot of the problems that we have sometimes. And in fact, it's, you know, we should all look in the mirror and say, you know, what, you know, we when times were good, we let government grow and grow and grow, and now times are tough and we're making tough decisions. But it wasn't the guy who's sweeping the streets or picking up your garbage necessarily whose fault that is. It was his managers and his bosses and all of us who said, wait, you know, let's get this done. Let's add more services and let's get more people on board. So, like I said, sometimes, you know, I'm a team leader. I'm the guy who I'm got to make sure these folks are motivated and get stuff done. And, you know, that can get me in trouble sometimes. But like I said, but I'm also willing to do what I have to do in terms of discipline and reorganizing and cutting if I have to make a budget work.
Sir, thank you. I'd like to thank you for coming. Any final quick comments?
Well, I didn't get a chance. I want to thank you for inviting me and for selecting me as one of your candidates. I think this is my first opportunity to be up in this area. And like I said, driving around today, it was, I mean, I've had an opportunity to work in beachfront communities now and in a few places in Florida, and this place is really lovely. I mean, it really is. I stood on your beach and looked out, and I thought, boy, I'd never had a view like this in Islamorada or in Hollywood. It was really kind of a unique view. So again, I would look forward to serving you. I would hope, well, I would start as an interim position. Hope that if we find that it seems to be working well for both of us, if we go longer term, you've had a great history of long-term stability. And my unfortunate has been that to be in communities that haven't had that kind of stability prior to me being there. It didn't exist after I was there. So to be in a place that's very stable would be great. So thank you for this opportunity, and best of luck to you, whether you choose me or not.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming up.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Every time I go in there,
That's why there's nothing in there. I was only a few things. I said,
it's probably 6 months old Halloween candy or something. I show up like everyone else like that.
wait a minute, is it like candy that you threw in 2009? Oh, but that was the guy.
And I stayed for a long time because of Brad said his million contributions. Nice to meet you. Hello.
Mayor Conte, Councilman French, and Councilman Billman.
Our third applicant is Ms. Kathleen Margolis from Coral Springs. And we'll wait 1 minute. How are you? Good evening, and have a seat.
I am fine.
Well, we're going to wait for Councilman Billman to start with the questions, but I'd like to say welcome to the city of Satellite Beach, and thank you for driving up. I am Mayor Joe Ferrante, Councilman Lloyd French, Councilman Greg Billman, Councilwoman Cheryl Dean, and Vice Mayor Scott Rhodes. I said at the beginning that we'd like to have a discussion of about 15 minutes. I've been going a little bit longer, but that's some of that's our issues here. We'd like to ask you several questions that we have written down, and then after those questions, to have a little further discussion with the council and yourself. When we're done with all the interviews, I am going to open it up to public comment. You may leave right after your interview. We will contact you either, depending on how late this evening it is or tomorrow, on the council's decision. I would like to let you know that our council meetings are recorded on YouTube, and that will be probably published tomorrow or the day after on YouTube. So just so you know that. Okay, with that in mind, I think we're ready to get started. Please give us some information about yourself, including your credentials, your most recent position, and your reason for leaving that position.
Certainly. First, I want to thank the council for inviting me to interview. I'm very flattered and honored. I have probably a different career path than many of the city manager types that you have dealt with. My career actually started in social services, and I worked for several human service agencies in upstate New York, and then we moved to Florida in 1993, October of 93. I went back to school and got my master's in human service administration because at that time I thought that was going to be my career path. I was hired after I received my master's by a city, the city of Tamarack, as the social services coordinator. And I managed the Office of Social Services, which is somewhat unusual for a municipality to have one, and we managed the senior transportation program, senior programs. About a year and a half into being the social services manager, the Parks and Recreation Director was fired for harassment of the staff, and the manager came to me and asked me if I would be the acting Parks and Recreation Director. And I had no background in Parks and Recreation, and I said, sure. And so I served in that capacity, in the acting capacity, for about 6 months. They finally did the selection, and I applied, and I was hired. And I was with the city of Tamarack for another 8 years as the Parks and Recreation Director. I left Tamarack, went to a neighboring city, Lauderdale Lakes, as Parks and Recreation Director. At that time, I had made the decision that I wanted to move into the manager's office, and so I started sort of an educational process and started asking for extra assignments so that I would be better prepared. I was with Lauderdale Lakes for about 4 years, and I was interviewing, and I was hearing, if we wanted, we would love to hire you if we needed a Parks and Recreation Director. So I took the bold step of resigning my position in probably the worst economic times, so that I could become a consultant, so I could demonstrate the breadth of my knowledge and gain additional knowledge. I consulted with Broward County in the area of cultural, of public art, and for the town of Lauderdale by the Sea, where I did a sewer rate study. I was then called by the city manager, the then city manager in Lake Worth. She had an assistant 2 position. She hired me immediately for the assistant 2 position. I was promoted. I was hired in December, and I was promoted the following October to assistant city manager. That city manager was terminated in December, early December, and I stayed during the hiring of the new city manager, and when he came on board, my contract was terminated because he deemed the position that he didn't need the position at that time.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have several questions, and then we'll bring it back to the council. Number 1, we have the second highest millage rate in Brevard County. This council is committed to reducing taxes and maintaining appropriate levels of services. How do you feel about the difficult decision of making cuts across the board within a city and setting an appropriate millage rate?
There are different ways of going about making cuts to a budget. And all of us have had to do that since the initial tax reform. Many municipalities started with making across-the-board cuts and have had several years of across-the-board cuts. We're now in situations in most municipalities where you really have to determine with conversations and very difficult conversations with your residents and with the elected officials about levels of service and what is desired. That is the issue. You have mandatory expenses that you have to pay, which are the pensions, and you have mandatory services, police and fire. Mostly everything else is discretionary, but your residents may or may not feel that way. And I know from looking at the resident survey that you did, there's a very high satisfaction level with a lot of the services that are provided. So, across the board cuts are not necessarily the way to go, as opposed to having those discussions about service levels and making the decisions based on what is appropriate for your community.
Thank you. Thank you. The second question. What is your view of the relationship of efficiency with municipal government?
Well, there's efficiency and there's effectiveness. Efficiency is doing something, in a manner that's expeditious. Effectiveness is almost more important. You have to determine if what you're doing is what needs to be done and if you're doing it properly. So it's really a blend of efficiency, what needs to be done and how it gets done.
Thank you. The next question is, the next two questions have to do with CRAs. What is your experience with Florida Statute 163, community redevelopment, and CRAs in general?
In the city of Lauderdale Lakes, we had a CRA, and when I worked in Lauderdale Lakes, I was the Parks and Recreation Director. I worked very closely with our CRA director. We were doing his name is Gary Rogers. At the time I left, which was 2010, he was the president of FRA. We worked very closely. He was doing a revision of the CRA plan. So I worked very closely with him to work on the meetings that were held with the residents, because I have a good track record of working with residents. In addition, there was a large project that the CRA had funded, and it was a joint library and cultural and educational center. The library was the first floor, it was the Broward County Libraries, and then the second floor was the city's cultural and educational center. The money was given from the county to the CRA, and the CRA was in charge of the project. I was actually the project manager for the city. And so I worked with him on that project extensively. I believe what you're referring to is how a CRA, what a CRA is allowed to spend their money on. And the CRA plan, as well as state statute, dictates what a CRA can spend their money on. I have read some of the issues. I read the Joint Legislative Committee report, and I've read some of the other things, and the city's response. I don't know what further action, or if there has been any further action. I do know that in the city of Tamarack, we did, and in the city of Lauderdale Lakes, the CRA did pay for police presence, additional police presence in the CRA district, as well as other services. landscaping and some other maintenance.
Thank you. And that was a great lead into my next question concerning the JLAC letter, which was regarding the allocation and transfer of funds from the CRA trust fund to the general fund to pay for police and fire salaries and benefits. What are your thoughts regarding the long-term repayment of funds from the general fund back to the CRA?
Well, in the letter, in the city's response, the city said that it would be, a terrible burden to the city to have to pay that back. And I believe there was going to be some explanation of whether there was any legal obligation to do so.
Thank you. Question number 8 or 6. What is your salary and benefit expectations during your tenure with the city?
As I stated in my letter, I was looking for something in the range of $105,000, broken up monthly,
Okay.
and perhaps some housing allowance, depending on the cost of housing, temporary housing in the community.
And would that be any other benefits with 105?
No.
Okay, thank you. My last question before the discussion, Ms. Margolis, thank you. What do you foresee will be the challenges Satellite Beach will face in the next few months with the budget process?
We were just discussing with the manager that he believes he has the budget 75% done.
Okay,
I also read the citizens report, which I found amazing. I actually forwarded it to the city manager who took over in Lake Worth as a fantastic example of what citizens can do, or what citizens and professional staff can do. I think a number of those suggestions or recommendations in there were valid and deserve more exploration with staff and the council. I tried to listen to as many of your meetings as I could. I don't have a feel for the community, but I would hope that the department directors and the manager have prepared their budgets knowing what is important to the community and what can be cut. I went through that exercise many times. And actually in Lake Worth, we had a change in our commission in November, and we had a balanced budget, obviously, which included a fire assessment fee. And when the new commission, it was a new mayor and another commissioner, which changed the majority vote, came in, they decided, they requested that staff figure out a way to delete the fire assessment fee and plug that hole in the budget. So we had to go back in November and rebalance the budget and take out $1.4 million.
Thank you. That's all the questions that I have, but I would like to bring it back to the council for some discussion items with you.
Again, the same question. Did you have the opportunity to drive around the city when you arrived?
Yes, I did. I took the map. I downloaded the map off of the website, and I tried to hit all of the parks because I felt that they would be in neighborhoods, and I drove through the neighborhoods to get, it's a lovely community. Very different from I live in Broward County, which is very, very built up. And also more like Lake Worth, which is in Palm Beach County, which has smaller houses and is more residential.
I had the opportunity to work in both Tamarack and Coral Springs last week, so it's definitely unique here. People should have up Brevard County. Mm-hmm. And then what is your availability? When would you be able to start?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
I'm staying overnight so that I will be here.
And question, you realize this is an interim position?
Yes, I do.
And that it may not turn into a full-time position. Are you, is that acceptable to you?
Totally acceptable.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Other council members?
You have as one of your achievements, you've written some grants. Are those difficult to do? Some of the cities do that in-house as part of the staff responsibilities?
In both Tamarack and Lake Worth, I was probably the only person on staff that wrote grants. I mean, in Tamarack and Lauderdale Lakes, I was probably the only person on staff that wrote grants. In Lake Worth, we did have a grant position. It was not a grant. They were not really writing grants as much as managing the grants. So I have written grants, starting with my work in nonprofits, and my initial work was in a housing agency. So I did a lot of HUD grants. So I've written millions of dollars of grants and managed them.
Thank you.
Yeah, ma'am, just a point about your efficiency versus effectiveness statement. I think you may have misapplied how we think of efficiency here, which is being effective at the lowest possible price. That's what we see as being efficient. What sort of a relationship, or where were you in the leadership structure with Lauderdale Lakes when the CRA issue occurred?
I was gone.
You were gone.
There's current CRA issue, or their issue that surfaced 2 years ago.
Right.
Yes, I left in 2009, in August of 2009, and that became apparent in the 2010 budget.
And were the issues that came up in that investigation, did you have anything to do with it while you were with the city? In other words, have you done anything that they found inappropriate?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. And then I did Google searches on everybody, so you just got to bear with me here. There was a Palm Beach Inspector General report regarding the city's beach and casino restoration issues. They found certain issues, certain problems with the project. And when I was reading it, it was kind of shades of other CRA issues that have happened around the state, including ours. Can you expound on that a little bit, on the Palm Beach Inspector General's report?
Sure. I actually was the staff person in charge of responding to all of the Inspector General management inquiries. The Beach and Casino project, it was was something that was 30 years in the making. When I came to Lake Worth as assistant two, I was the project manager for that project. At that point, the design was almost completed for the casino, and it was probably 50% complete for the beach redevelopment. It was two different projects. The issue that was part of the inquiry, the Inspector General's inquiry, had to do with the city, and this is prior to my coming there, had determined the construction to be a substantial rehabilitation. There were some people who felt that that was a misrepresentation of what it was. We provided all of the documentation to the Inspector General. Their response actually was that what they found was we had misinterpreted the flood zone. So the substantial rehabilitation designation did not even apply because we were not in a flood zone, in the coastal flood zone. So what they recommended was that we have an inspection done of the seawall, which we had done, and the seawall inspection came back, the engineering report came back that we needed some repairs done to the seawall to give it another 10 years of good life. And so that was then included in the project.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
If we were to ask the Lauderdale Lakes city manager or city commission to describe one of your strengths and perhaps an area where you might have a particular challenge, what would they tell us?
The Lauderdale Lakes?
Right.
Well, the city manager is no longer with Lauderdale Lakes that I worked for. She was terminated because of the CRA issues. The current city manager was the assistant city manager who I actually reported to, and he would tell you that I'm a phenomenal person, very skilled, and much able to work with the community, able to work with staff, and able to work with the elected officials. The elected officials have actually turned over since I left. So I would say that most of them would agree that I was the Parks and Recreation Director during the time where we had a 300% growth in parks. So we built 3 new parks, a pool, and we're actually, because of reorganizations that I did to the department, and reorganizations that I also worked with the Public Services Director or the Public Works Director, we were able to actually decrease our budget while maintaining new properties. So I would say that they would say I was good, if not great.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other, any final words?
I look forward, if chosen, to working with the council and working with residents. You know, Satellite Beach seems to be a lovely area. You know, I got a taste in Lake Worth of living. I actually lived a mile from the beach, and here in Palm Beach County, and particularly Broward, the beach is full of condos, and you can't see it on both sides actually of A1A. And I was so pleasantly surprised at how open and beautiful Satellite Beach is.
Thank you for those comments. Thank you for driving up, and
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. We have one more applicant for discussion, and that would be Ms. Ann Samuelson. I'm just going to ask her her credentials. Yeah. That's what she said, because everybody else is now. Yeah. Anybody want a water?
I do. Colin?
Okay. Good question. I heard that you said Tamarack and you're happy to be here.
And I think you know everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, see? Yeah.
Good evening, and thank you for coming to this meeting tonight. I think you know the council, but Mayor Joe Ferrante, Councilman Lloyd French, Councilman Greg Billman, Councilwoman Cheryl Dean, and Vice Mayor Scott Rhodes. We have been discussing 15 to 20 minutes, we're going a little over 50. Some questions, really interview and discussion. We'd like to ask you several questions that I have recorded, and then we'll come back for discussion. After that, You'll be the last applicant tonight. We're going to open up to public comment, and then public comment we'll discuss, and then come back to the council for a decision. You do not have to stay for that. We're not sure. We'll make a decision and then let you know our decision either this evening or tomorrow, if that's okay.
Very good.
With that in mind, I would like to tell you that this is on YouTube, so it would be published probably tomorrow or the next day. So just to let our council meetings are, you may have seen them also. First, I'd like to ask if you could give us some information about yourself, including your credentials to become a city manager and most recent positions in public and private sector.
Okay. Well, I've lived in the community since 1988, and I live in the unincorporated, even though it's a Satellite Beach address. And I've had experience in the public sector, in the private sector, and the nonprofit. Specifically with the public sector, I have been involved with the South Patrick Residents Association actually since 1988, and since 2005 I've been the president of that organization, and we have 6 area directors, and we work very closely with the Florida Department of Transportation, with the different staff and department at the county, for instance, planning and zoning under Robin Sabrino and her staff, and John Denninghoff with public works, solid waste, and other departments as well as issues come up in our community. And I deal directly with many of the department heads and the staff on issues that do come up. So I work very closely and formed excellent working relationships with the county staff and so on, and also with the county commission. And of course, our organization has to go, if it's a policy issue, and we must bring it before the county commission, and they make the decision, whatever we are asking. And we've been very, very successful. In fact, as we're batting 1,000, because we don't come frivolously. We bring the facts and evidence and provide information to the commissioners so that they can make the best decision, because it is their decision if it is a policy decision. I also work with the Road and Bridge Department. We look at our MSTU funds, our Municipal Taxing Services funds, and we look at the different road projects that we have in our area. And I have ridden around. I don't know if you remember Keith Allward, who was with Road and Bridge for a very long time, recently retired. And we used to tour our area and make sure that things were going the way they should, and that we had the potholes and the projects done that we needed to have repaired. This is something that we've done for many years. We're kind of a unique organization. I would say that I have functioned as a city manager in many respects. The other thing that is extremely important is the involvement with our state legislative delegation. We've worked on the Pineda Wall. That was a very successful endeavor. That's a safety wall. We used to have traffic flying off into people's backyards along the Pineda. I don't know if that's still along the Pineda. And that was a very unsafe situation as far as that was concerned. So we worked. Is that? No. How about that? Not working.
It was.
I can get it working. Here we go. I'm going to hold it. I'm very, okay. Now you can you hear me? Okay. Yes. Excellent. So that was, we worked with the legislative delegation over several years in FDOT District 5, and you've also probably seen the project that we have along State Road 513, the big landscaping project. Went to bat for that, and that originally was at about $300K, and I think actually when they put it in was about $250,000. That's the public, basically the public public sector, I think, that really applies to Satellite Beach. But the other important thing is that I've been a businesswoman in the community for a very long time. I basically take care of all the financial aspects of our business. My Master's of Public Administration helps me with that, as well as my Master's of Science from Purdue a number of years ago, with a very heavy emphasis in statistics. So I'm very comfortable with quantitative data as well as the qualitative aspects that we deal with. I've also been the CFO, the financial officer in Indiana when we ran Samuelson Bruning Engineering and Construction, and we had the largest commercial and residential remodeling firm on the north side of Indianapolis. So we had at times 40 to 50 employees, and the hiring and firing I was involved in, so to speak. Not too many that were fired, but sometimes people are not doing their job, and there is cause for that. But one of the very important things is that our employees were extremely important to us, because without them, you don't have a business. So that is an extremely important aspect there. And I think those things and my long-term relationships with county commissioners and the staff and a lot of different individuals in the community, as well as knowing a number of city managers over the years and working with them on certain issues. And one of the cities, of course, that SPRA, South Patrick Residents Association, has worked with is Satellite Beach, and we partnered on many different projects. Scorpion Court, I was able to get funding from the school board on that, worked very hard with Ed Washburn, who was one of the assistant county managers, and with the pipe, the North Drainage project, we also partnered, and I was able to get DePatry to sign on to that. And then the Satellite Beach Public Works did an excellent job in moving that forward, and your grant writers were very successful with that too. So there have been a lot of different projects that we have been involved in over the years with our organization and me directly.
Thank you. Thank you. I have some specific questions.
Yes, sir.
Number one. We have the second highest millage rate in Brevard County. This council is committed to reducing taxes and maintaining appropriate levels of service. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the difficult decision of making cuts across the board within the city and setting an appropriate millage rate?
Well, that is something that I've been very engaged in at the county level, and I have spoken a number of budget meetings, and I met with County Manager Howard Tipton a couple of years ago and for a couple of hours, and we discussed a lot of those issues. And I think that it's something you've got to look at both the qualitative and the quantitative data. And I'm not sure that it would be prudent to make cuts. Say you were going to say 10% all across the board. I think that each of the departments needs to be looked at and analyzed to see what benefits they give to the community, what the community thinks about the benefits that they give. And that's a huge issue. Something that I've championed for years is residents being involved in government, helping them to be involved in government, and making sure they have a voice, because it is their government and these are taxpayer dollars. There are very difficult decisions. That property values have decreased, but I understand that you're going to be up about a little over 2% possibly with your valuation, and that will bring up and it looks like your millage rate may be dropping a little bit to be able to come to some type of a medium point, if you will. But that is a huge issue. People are hurting right now, and as millage rates increase, the taxes increase, and a lot of people are suffering. They're out of jobs. But again, those are all the issues that have to be taken into consideration, and they're hard decisions. But the people have to be listened to as to what they want, because that's what the city is. It is the people that live and work and play in a community, and it's their city.
Thank you. Second question. What is your view of the relationship of efficiency with municipal government?
Okay. Efficiency, now I look at efficiency and effectiveness as two different things. Sometimes efficiency can be talking about not only the cost of services, but how they benefit the individuals. So again, efficiency, you have to be very, very careful because again, you're talking about costs and you're also talking about in quantitative and you're also talking about qualitative. So again, it's extremely important to engage the citizens and I think that's what the council has been doing. And looking at the KPEG, which I had read, I was duly impressed that volunteer citizens could get together and spend their time and energy to analyze and do some fact-finding in the city to come up with some of the concerns that they might have, some of the possibilities of improvement, and so on. So one has to be very careful about cutting if it is going to impair crucial services, fire and police, and frankly public works. And you know, these things are you've got to have those services, and more mandates if they're coming down, then you have to meet those mandates as well. And a lot of cities are very much struggling under mandates that are unfunded, and I'm sure that you've seen that too. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Next two have to do with CRAs. What is your experience with Florida Statute 163, community redevelopment, and CRAs in general?
Right. Well, I have researched that and looked at the CRAs and seen that there are a number of CRAs in the state of Florida that are in financial difficulty for various reasons. One of the things with CRAs, and of course the statute's very specific on what you can and cannot do, and of course the CRA plans that you then create to implement the CRA district is something that the city has gone forth on, and I understand now you are in the process of revising that. I think that one of the problems, potential problems with CRAs is that, and you have eliminated that problem, frankly, because you no longer have an advisory board to the CRA board. You now have, what, the five council members and then 2 community members, so you do have the oversight and the transparency that would be available to the people to watch you discuss and make decisions on that. And I think it's extremely important because one of the potential problems with CRAs is that very lack of oversight and transparency when they meet in a particular location where it's not televised and people can't get to and so on. So very important. And it's up to the council and the city as to whether they want a CRA and how you can utilize it to best use resources that you choose to direct to a certain area so they can be valuable.
Thank you. Second part of that, you had mentioned that you are aware of the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee, the JLAC letter.
Correct.
That was sent to the city regarding the allocation and transfer of funds from the CRA trust fund to the general fund to pay for police and fire salaries and benefits.
Right.
What are your thoughts regarding the long-term repayment of these funds from the general fund to the CRA?
Well, I think it's a matter of looking at the law, making sure that what the City of Satellite Beach did is within those guidelines, and that your CRA plan also had that delineated. And it may be, it's my understanding for policing, if it's innovative policing, that you can allocate CRA funds. So I think that the city could look and see what innovative policing was done, and with the fire department, you know, you just really have to, I think it's very important for the citizens and for the integrity of the city to fully analyze what was within the law, what's ethical, and what's proper, and to be as forthright as you can about it.
Thank you. Next question. What is your salary and benefit expectations during your tenure with the city?
I would be looking at, it really would work out to about $8,000 a month, which works out to about $96,000. And as far as benefits, I don't know what the city has to offer. that would be certainly up for discussion as far as that's concerned. But salary-wise, and I did look at the salaries online to see what you had, and I'll be very frank, the question is for the council. Do you want to pay your city manager at the top, or does it matter? And that's really up to you. My question is, what can the city afford as well? Because that is also an issue. So, but I gave you kind of a ballpark figure there.
Thank you. Last question that I have before we come back to the council. What do you foresee will be the challenges Satellite Beach will face in the next few months with the budget process?
Well, again, you're going to have to look and see, depending on the will of the council, what level of service you want in each of your departments and what's important to the community and what's important to you. Again, just cutting across the board, and I've had this discussion, like I say, at the county level, is not necessarily the best way to handle it if you really want to properly analyze it, and again, quantitatively and qualitatively, and to be able to make sure that the people are involved in the budget process as well, that they have a say to let the council members know what is important to them. Obviously, you have shrunk your workforce here, and I don't know how much smaller that can be to actually do the job that needs to be done for the city. But it's going to have to be an honest and open process, and a realistic one, because you've got to, where the rubber hits the road and people are affected is the most important point.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open it up to the council for some discussion.
Sure. First. I'm not going to ask you if you drove around town today when you got into town, because obviously you live here. Do you have any experience with emergency services?
Well, when I worked on I served, I did not work, I served on the Transportation Planning Organization, and that was one thing that I forgot to say, that I've served on many government committees, boards, panels, West Viera, working with businesses and so on, as well as the Transportation Planning Organization. As you know, Councilwoman, that they deal with all the transportation issues in the county, and I had the opportunity to get to know Bob Lay, and all of these issues are brought up at that meeting, so I am familiar with the excellent work that he did. And but I've not had any direct impact by that office, but I am familiar with how they operate and what the needs of the community are for being prepared for any emergency. And of course, as we hit hurricane season, that's certainly one of the big issues.
Right. And then when are you available to start?
Tomorrow.
I think that's it for me.
Thank you.
You mentioned resident involvement is very important.
Indeed.
You've been president of SPRAW for 7 years? Since
Yes, that's correct.
Have you increased the residential involvement in the meetings and the volunteerism and things like that? Because I know I think we've kind of strived to do that here, and I think it's increased. It seems to have. And do you have any ideas?
Yes, and we've been very successful. Just a very recent example, we had people at Lake Shepherd entrance who bought the materials, the plants and the mulch and so on, and a number of individuals got together and they planted. We're also looking at refurbishing one of the lighthouse at North Waterway Estates, and we've discussed amount of money that SPRAW can put in, and the volunteers. They're doing a fundraising effort and coordinating that effort. We've had the signs where people have come in and put their time pro bono, if you will, acting as volunteers. And I find that it's very issue specific. In other words, citizens have an area of interest, an area of an issue that's important to them, and volunteers will come and go depending on that. But that's not a problem. If you can, give them the tools that they need, and just maybe a little direction on who to contact at the county or whatever it takes. People want to do these things, and they need to do these things. It is their community, and so that's a very, very important aspect in South Patrick Residents Association.
Thank you. Thank you.
It just struck me, I should have said this to the other folks, but I need to put your mind at rest on the whole across-the-board budget cut issue that was discussed. In fact, the whole KPEG idea was not to do that, was to target budget cuts. So I think we all understand that targeted budget cuts are the way to go, not across the board. So I don't know where that question came from. Efficiency, I need to maybe set you straight on that. My thought process anyway on efficiency is there is not a difference between efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency is being effective at the lowest possible cost.
Right, and that's one of the definitions, definitely, and I know that, people use that, can sometimes separate that and talk about efficiency and effectiveness, but you're absolutely right, and it's about cost benefit.
There you go. And qualitative versus quantitative, I like that.
Exactly.
Let's see. Let's get to. I'm not a fan of HOAs. So when I read your background, I go, oh boy, here we go.
But it's not. It's a residents association, strictly voluntary.
That's where I was going. It seemed to me that the SPRA is much more of a government, pseudo-government organization than an HOA. You're not running around telling people to cut their lawns and stuff like that.
No, we don't do that, and we have no authority to do that. That's if there is an issue, it's a county issue.
Yeah, good. I'm just telling you.
Yes, no.
HOAs and I don't get along, and when I first read that, I thought, oh boy, here we go.
No.
But good recovery.
Thank you.
I got to ask you. We Googled everybody, and I somehow got stuck with asking the hard questions of everybody. So I have to ask you. The issues with the property appraiser's office.
I was a state witness, and that's the way that ended up. It was back in '08, and someone in the office of the appraiser, anyway, it went to FDLE. They were investigating Lance Larson, who is the deputy appraiser, and they came across 4 files, or 4 individuals or whatever, and one of them was Jack and I would say mainly me, because my name seemed to appear much more frequently than my husband's. And we did get that we had a refund of about $700. And it was a communication via email, as it says on your trim notice. If you have an issue with the way something has been appraised, you have the right as a citizen to ask the question. And I pushed it, and I said, took it all the way up, and I said, Mr. Larson, you have the expertise from the Department of Revenue and everything else. I would like you to look at this and make sure that, because appraising is an art and a science, and I said, I would like this appraised properly, to make sure that it's appraised properly. And he did. I don't know what he did. And the issue was they found the files in the box, and FDLE, I entertained an agent, and so did my husband, and they questioned us, and it turned out that we ended up being a witness for the state prosecution. Okay. So we were not in any way involved in that, except as, whoa, look, they have a number of properties, and it was a whopping $700 that we got back.
Gotcha. Good. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman French. I've asked this question to everyone, so I'll ask you. Although you haven't necessarily served as a city manager before, if we were to go to some of the folks that you work with directly right now and ask them to describe one of your strengths and perhaps an area where you could improve, what might they tell us?
Well, I think one of the things that they would say is that my focus and my ability to, if someone says, hey, we need information on this, is to go and get that information, to gather it, to research it, to analyze it, and to be able to look at the pros and cons of every one of those issues, the consequences, both intended and unintended. A lot of people don't think about unintended consequences. They'll say, well, this looks great. And you say, well, what if? And there's always the if-then statements over and over again. If you do this, then what are you going to get? And then a decision can be made. And I think that is one of my biggest strengths. Sometimes I focus too much. It might be a strength and a weakness. I might actually forget to eat. I'm so involved in a particular issue, and it is true. I get focused to bring it to completion, to do the very best job I can, and to make sure that the citizens also weigh in on that. So I would say that's a twofold thing. So maybe it's a strength and a weakness. Is that fair?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming tonight. Any,
Yes, could I make just one closing comment? And I hope that you found the information that I sent to you, both the cover letter, the two-page resume, and the recommendation or reference from William Washburn helpful to get a feel for how I could benefit the city. And again, years of collaboration in working with state legislators, county staff, commissioners, different city personnel, to be able to create those relationships so that you can also create results is extremely important. And I take that very seriously, that residents, obviously, that's a big part of what I've done, is listening to residents, getting residents involved. And one last thing is, I know it's been a difficult time for your city, and I would say that it would be time for healing and a time to open the doors to City Hall to anyone who wants to participate, regardless of past events, and to move forward. I think that's an extremely important issue for the city. Thank you.
thank you very much. Thank you. All right, our interview process is now concluded. We have interviewed Robert Bartolotta, Kenneth Fields, Kathleen Margolis, and Samuelson. The council will bring it back to the council to discuss, and then I will open up for public comment regarding these interviews. Council?
Well, I would like to begin by saying that I also Googled every individual and did a lot of research last night, but I took the opportunity to call each one today and discuss some of those issues that appeared on Google rather than to ask the questions in public. So I was aware of all the questions that were asked this evening. So I wanted to make everybody aware of that. Other than that, there's a lot of information I would like to hear from the public before I discuss any further.
Okay, thank you. Let me hear.
If that's a shot across my bow, I'm sorry. I just thought it'd be proper for the public to hear those things
Well,
too.
you just said you did asked all the hard questions. I asked a lot of hard questions.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay. I just felt the public needed to know those issues.
Any discussion on, you'd like to hear public comment first before coming back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
All right, then let's do it. I'd like to open this for public comment. Now, remember, we are just going to discuss the 4 candidates. You will have 3 minutes if you can state your name. Since we are on YouTube, you can state your address or just resident, which would mean resident of Satellite Beach or non-resident. And we have moved the microphone a little bit, so would anybody like to make any public comment?
Dana Billman, city resident. I thought the presentations were very good. I have a little problem with us paying them benefits. It's a temporary interim job. They know that coming in. I think most people who are in a job such as that sort of understand. So I have a real problem. I don't think anybody should be earning vacation while they're working with us. They obviously don't have a job now, or, I don't know that that's right or wrong. I just think that's not something we should be paying people in this position. I also, if you're applying for a job out of town, you understand you are going to have to live someplace, and you will have to have a phone, and you will have to have those items. You provide that for yourself, or you don't go take that job, or you assume, like traveling nursing, that's part of what they pay you. It's in all that. So I think I also think that some of the salaries are a little on the high side. I think as a city, we should maybe offer them something else just because that's what they're asking for. If I were someone, I'd ask high and whatever, but I think they're a little impressed with what they bring to us.
Thank you. And I would like to ask the council, Mr. Karate, are you going to come back in for just this discussion? Yes, you could. Thank you. Other public comment? Pat? Pat? Oh, sorry, Patrick.
Pat Sims, resident. I'd like to know, you've all done your Googling, but I'd like to know if you've gone ahead and done a complete background check on any of these 4 candidates. The lady that was asked for $105,000 for 6 months, and she included in her resume that she writes grants or has.
Yes.
And I'd like to know if that was part of her job description, or did she get additional recompense for that grant writing benefit. Mr. Bartolotta mentioned the dismissal of a police chief, and I'd like to know a little bit about that. Why, and for what reason they did that. One of the ladies, I have a little confused as to what her definition of innovative policing is in regard to a CRA. And I do agree with Mrs. Billman. Some of these requests for income are a little bit high, and I thought we were trying to save money. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Patrick?
Pat Gibbons, 469 Coach Road. First of all, thank you, Council, Mayor, for extremely professional job done here tonight. Excellent. The whole process really went really smooth, and I'm just proud to be a citizen as you guys conducted yourselves here tonight, really. I like, and Lloyd, thanks for the old corporate strength and weaknesses. I can relate to that, being on very many interviews myself. I like every candidate. What I was concerned about was getting good candidates up here, based on the short-term process and what we're going through here. Boy, we got some really good candidates. Super. First 2 guys were really sharp, and, they were. But, Ian really brought something to the table, local, and I don't know, in the beginning of the process, I thought, because I know Ann a little bit, and I know Jack, her husband, and I was kind of weighing through it. Then as time went on and as she was talking, I thought, here's someone who's a resident, who knows us, who knows the community, and she really made it through the process, very intelligent, very Fort Worth, and I don't know. So she gets my vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Pat. Other public comment? Don? Skip, you'll be here.
Is that your computer? Tom McClendon, resident. I'm going to just go down the list. Mr. Bartolotto, when I read his resume on the agenda packet last night, left with the same thing I was left with here tonight, that he's been involved in several high visibility legal issues or scandals. It wasn't clear to me whether all of those have been completely put to bed. One is still out there, 5 months old, no resolution. I have a concern about that. He also mentioned that CRA funds were used in Sarasota for the same purpose that they were used here in Sally Beach, and he didn't use the word enhanced, but that's what he meant. Mr. Fields stated in his cover letter that he worked for Richard Sala. Is that the same guy, Richard Sala, that was here? Okay. Yes. I think he also mentioned that the use of CRA funds were used under his watch in a similar manner that they were used here. So I think that's an area that's going to be, it's going to need some more exploration. He also understood that the position was being offered as an interim. That again, he stated that his resume would be out there, and I think that was a follow-on to the possibility of a permanent position following in. I'm not sure, but I would want to make sure that he would commit full-time to the interim until a permanent replacement was found, and stay in that position until he was basically relieved by the city during the transition. Ms. Margolis, she didn't provide me with an adequate understanding of efficiency and effectiveness, which was brought up, and she seems to be light on her communication skills in public, and I think that's one of the things that is really important for a city manager. We've had one that's been great at that. And she also mentioned that she's a really heavy spender in Parks and Recreation, which I don't know. Ms. Samuelson, I somewhat come back to where Pat Gibbons is she's very involved and knowledgeable in the local community. Most of us know her. She's knowledgeable, local, Brevard, and state. She knows who the players are, where they are. She doesn't have direct city manager experience, but then again, that might be to our advantage during instead of hiring a top gun to come in here for an interim position. She appeared to me certainly capable of stepping in for an interim, and I liked her response to the pay scales. It's not a buzzer for me. Had two little short ones.
Thank you.
We heard a buzzer for the first time.
You didn't bring your phone with you. That's what it was.
Skip Bollinger, resident. First off, I wish to commend the council on kind of changing direction from where we were at the previous meeting, and that was given major consideration to the CGA people. I think this selection process is much more, well, I'm a lot happier with it, okay, and whether I'm speaking for anybody else, I don't know, but I like the open process and the chance for them to go through an interview process, and I wish time would permit that now that we know a little bit about these people, we could go home, do some homework, and then come back with another round of questions. But I guess as a practical matter, that would be out of the question. The other things I had I had some CRA questions, but they were not to these individuals specifically. They were more general questions that I would like to ask of council, but I think at a different meeting would be more appropriate. So thank you very much.
And thanks for those comments. Mayor?
Dorothy Russell, nearby resident. I was struck today with all of the candidates and their abilities and everything, but I want to give you a little bit of personal insight I have, because although I don't live in the north part of Satellite Beach, I own properties there. And I recently had, a couple of years ago, a serious dispute with the Department of Transportation on one of my properties. And I didn't prevail, but and I'm not a member of the Homeowners Association since I don't live there, and I don't really care about the Homeowners Association there. But Ann Samuelson was very professional and very helpful in guiding me to the right people to see and what to do in the dispute that I had with the Department of Transportation. And so I was pleased to see that she is also a candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. Joel?
Joel Sugar, Satellite Beach resident. First thing I'd like to say is I just wish Jason Steele was at this meeting so he'd be able to see how professional council is instead of doing a drive-by shooting for his campaign in our venue. Now that I've got that for YouTube. What I'd like to say is look at the candidates, see who has baggage. Make sure we don't have somebody with baggage. My opinion, very good candidates. Some have more baggage than others, so I think some have other expectations. The first woman, I can't remember their names, and I do that on purpose. She didn't appear to have the experience. She had a lot of experience in Parks and Recreation, but it kind of goes, she's always reporting to the person, so she wouldn't get my vote. Two guys kind of have a lot of baggage, and the fourth candidate appears to have her act together and know what's going on. I purposely didn't read their resumes. I wanted to get a first impression when they got here. But that's what my impression of this whole thing was. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Good evening, Jason Hoppenbauer, Satellite Beach resident. I too would like to commend the council on such a professional interviewing process, and I was impressed at being able to take part in this process tonight. Just want to let you know I was raised in South Florida. My wife was born and raised in South Florida, and we moved out of South Florida for the reasons that if you read the newspaper or see on the news, South Florida is probably one of the most corrupt government areas, I think, in the country, with a lot of the things that are going on. I think that the three of the candidates didn't seem to see a CRA they didn't like, which I wasn't comfortable with. And I was impressed with Ms. Samuelson's approach and her tact and her skill, it seems to me, at being able to interact with different levels of our communities through county government, the city councils, residents, and all of that. So I would just be very careful at who we select, and like some of the other comments, I'd be very careful that we do a thorough investigation of some of those candidates that we're going to consider. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Any other public comment? Okay, I see none. At this time, I'd like to bring it back to the council for discussion, recommendations, motions, etc. We do, I will, since this is new, whatever we come up with, I would like to also leave here with a negotiated price, or a price that we would like to offer. Mr. Beadle has provided us with a contract, a draft contract that says date of start, gives the council latitude on a moment, to let go without cause, and then we can fill in some dates on that if we want to do. So we do. I see you do have the draft in front of you.
I think we all
should have the draft. So we have to do that. We have to look at the draft. We have to come up with a name, and then proceed from there. So I'll just leave it up to the council.
I'll start. There are a couple things. I do believe that our applicants should be subject to a background check and also a drug test. I believe that's standard. I think that's important. And I am going to note that only one applicant is an ICMA member, which I think is important. Our job here is to appoint a city manager with managerial experience to get us through this process. The city still has to operate with Mr. Crotty leaving here on July 1st. I know that some of the folks have some baggage on Google. I think right now we all have some baggage on Google, especially after the election last year. That's unfortunate. It is what it is. These are also high-profile positions. When you take a municipal job, whether you're a Parks and Rec director or an interim city manager or a city manager, that comes with the territory. And the longevity or the tenure for a city manager in Florida is only 5 years. So you are going to see turn, and you are going to see churn, and you are going to get the press's view of a subject. I did Google, and I also did interview myself, each one of the candidates this morning, to discuss those issues with them. And with that, I'll let others talk, and I do have some other issues to talk about.
Thank you. Let me just ask Mr. Beadle, what kind of background check? A background check could take up to a month? No. Up to a day?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know, some of our background checks take 6 months, but...
Oh, it's not that kind of background check. It's basically,
Fingerprints and...
NACA or NAAC or whatever. Yeah, it's just a computer check.
Oh, it's just it's a computer check now?
It's basically a national agency check.
National agency check.
NCIC. Okay, so sorry. Okay, thank you, Chris.
Which applicant had the, I see the minutes.
Ken Fields.
Fields?
Okay.
I just comment that in our job description for city manager, for licenses, certifications, and registrations, it lists none.
And that's because it's 27 years old probably, right, Mr. Crowley? It's old.
It's old? Yes.
It hasn't been updated. And so that's also part of the process with an interim, is to create a job description that is what this council wants with its cultural change and what the community wants. So that job description, when I saw it, it is old, and it's
Is that something we could obtain, like from League of Cities, or?
I believe every member of council received a letter from the president of the Florida City County Management Association. And the range rider team would be willing to come in and assist with that and help you put your perspectives together for recruitment if that's your choice.
If I can just make a statement on it, certifications. In the military, there's something called PMP. I think that's on the outside too, a professional program management professional or something like that.
For management
And a lot of DOD contracts these days are requiring POP they were requiring PMP certifications for program managers. I have met a lot of folks who don't have PMPs who could outmanage somebody with a PMP. Getting a PMP was tough work, it was tough studying, it was a tough test, but it doesn't mean that they can manage better than somebody who doesn't have one. So that's, and I think what we're looking for in an interim manager is somebody who can come in and help operationally manage the city as well as get us through the budget period. And I think somebody with that sort of experience and familiarity with the city and the issues is important. I got to tell you, I was heartened to hear the folks get up and talk, because I got the exact same. I walked away with the exact same feeling. Coming in here, I actually thought that I was favoring Mr. Bartolotta, and at the end of it, I'm favoring Ms. Samuelson for multiple reasons, and I can go over them, but it would take me too long.
Again, just throw out some names. Certainly, Mr. Bartolotta would be my first or second choice, and Ms. Samuelson also came across very well with her. The things that she said, some of the key words that we've used here on council and things. Of course, she's in the community, and she's probably more familiar with those than the others. But
well, can we do this? And I feel strongly that perhaps we should do an elimination process. I think that Kathleen, because she was not a city manager and was an assistant to you, and then an assistant city manager and a Parks and Rec director, maybe we should eliminate her and then go forward to the other three and discuss them.
Yeah, what do you think? The other way to do it is do it like we did we can discuss and then do a tabulation vote, a ballot vote. Just like we did, which one was it that we did that one? We did CRA advisory, CRA. We did like that.
Well, we have a score sheet. I mean, we could just put a number one.
If everybody has said something, I appreciate the four people that we interviewed. I've never thought of this position, that this is my concern with a couple of candidates, as being not a training ground, but a place to learn. I don't think the next 4 months is where you learn to be a city manager. And that's the problem I do have with probably Ann and Kathleen, because they have not been city managers. Others have, but Mr. Bartolotta, he said he decreased the millage rate 41% from the rollback or the roll-up. We decreased the millage rate from the roll-up. So It's a play on words. So it's not, we did that too. We were supposed to go to 8.9 and we stayed at 8.5, so whatever that difference is. And I like Mr. Fields, but there was some things that were brought up. I'm afraid that anybody we bring in that doesn't have either ICMA experience right now or others, there is going to be a learning process. And that learning process could be 45 days. And that 45 days is critical to us. That would be till August 1st. Almost of the opinion that we also should consider going with staff on board and appointing who we said last week and continue to look. I mean, that would be just another option. I think hurricanes would be supported by Don, by the fire chief and the police chief, and we could use an acting city manager. Even though Brenda said she couldn't do it, I think she has said that she could. But it's just in the mix. I like Ken Fields, and was very good in their interview. I thought our interview process was very good. I wasn't sure, a lot of it was citizen input, us doing the work as opposed to a city manager doing the work. And I think the city manager has to be 100% involved in getting things done. She was saying that we had to do it, and that's okay, but I think that's a city manager's position. And I just, this thing of a training ground, and I don't mean that, I just think that if we hire somebody, they have to hit the ground running tomorrow. If you can't hit the ground running tomorrow, I think we're not making a good move, regardless of cost. So that's just my input on that. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I think Ms. Samuelson's experience brings her to the level that you're looking for, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I think her relationships with county and city officials that she's had for years and years, her community knowledge, would require no spin-up time. I will point out that she was the only one to have used the H word. She was the only one to have said that we need to be prepared right now for the H word to happen. She was very definitive in her discussion with regard to emergency services.
That's because
She's got best government. She's got the best government and business mix. Everybody else is almost pure government. I think we need some business leadership in this city. She's done business budgeting, and it gets no better than business budgeting, especially when you're budgeting for your own business. Her educational qualifications are unmatched, MPA and a Master of Science in quantitative data. She's done hiring and firing. She discussed the fact that residents need to be involved in government. I didn't take what you took. I didn't take that to mean that residents or us need to do everything. She was the only one of the group that actually inculcated the Satellite Beach values of volunteerism. She was the only one that talked about volunteerism, which Satellite Beach is based on. Her salary range is certainly reasonable, especially when you compare it to the other folks. The fact that she can start right away is a definite plus. She's not a CRA fan. Okay, good. I think we're in the process of doing some things with our CRA right now. She didn't come out though and say that we need to kill it. She just said we need to work. Let's see. So she was the only one to discuss the H words, citizen volunteerism. I was very happy to see that she wasn't a code enforcement, juggernaut. She is certainly very focused. And she was also, by the way, and I think this is due to her understanding of the community, she was also the only one of the four to discuss the elephant in the room, and that is that this city needs to heal. And the way we're going to heal is for everybody to get together, and for those folks who continue to be vehement and sometimes vile, those folks who would rather see the status quo. She was the only one to have made the point that we all need to become part of the solution. Those people need to quit doing what they're doing and become part of the solution, and she said she was going to welcome those folks into doing that, out of the four. I think that is a strong, strong statement.
Thank you. Good recap.
He's quiet over there.
Well, I'm crunching numbers, first of all.
Okay.
CGA would end up costing us about $16,000 a month for, yes, CGA, isn't that what I said?
If we've gone with
If we go with
okay.
CGA,
I didn't know that. Okay.
it's at $165 an hour,
Yes.
all right, 3 days a week, 8 hours a day, it'll cost us $16,000 a month, all right, which is a lot more than any of the other people were asking for. So, I agree that for an instantaneous solution, if we had a replacement city manager waiting in the wings for 30 days, that might be a good course of action. But again, I can't spend my money that way, and I don't think people would want me to spend their money that way. Ms. Margolis didn't meet my expectations. I gave her the benefit of the doubt when I first read her cover letter and resume, but the more she spoke, the more it appeared to me that she wasn't ready for the position, and I don't think I could support her, especially at the rate that she suggested.
I believe that was a year. She said 105,000. I don't think that was a 6-month salary.
2,020 a week. I figured it out.
Okay, so 2,020.
8,100 a month.
Plus housing.
Plus housing.
Yes,
Plus housing.
yes, I just want to say, because Pat.
So again, I didn't see the
Okay.
I didn't see the return on the investment there. And I agree with some of the citizen comments about baggage. All right, and one, Mr. Bellata said perhaps one of his weaknesses was community interaction, and that's a big weakness because we need that. I mean, without that, whether you're a permanent city manager or an interim, you're going to fail. You have to be in touch with the people. And, I think, and again, with Mr. Fields, again, that's, it may seem funny that I asked those strength weaknesses questions, but it's really what revealed the most about them.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Fields said that he can be considered brusque or abrasive. That's what the word he was searching for, brusque or abrasive at times. And that's certainly not conducive to citizen interaction. It certainly won't be conducive, neither of those would be conducive to interaction with the staff, which during this short period of time, up to 6 months, is going to be critical during the budget process and the search for the new city manager. Mike Crotty has said that the budget is 75% complete. All right, so there's 25% left to do. We have the staff here to assist, and I believe that they are ready to assist. I mean, it was evidenced with what the staff was able to do just with a bunch of us citizens as we did KPIC. That's indicative to me of the type of helpfulness and professionalism that the staff will inject into all of this. So what we're looking for is to create an environment for not only the staff to feel comfortable interacting, but also for the community to feel comfortable interacting. And the words that I heard out there seem to indicate that they were comfortable with Ms. Samuelson simply because she identified with the area, understood the challenges, not only in the local level, but also in the county and the state. and think of the context that she's made over the years and how those might benefit her as far as places to reach out for advice. So again, just from a gut feeling perspective, I think that I would support Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. That was a well said.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything?
Yeah, I still have more to say. I think that our job as city council and representing 10,000 folks here, our job is to hire the most qualified person to get us through this interim process. Like I said before, high-profile jobs come with some of that baggage. Anne has not been in a high-profile position, and that's perhaps why she doesn't have some of that baggage that goes along with a city manager position, where it's very volatile, and typically the politics change every several years, and that's what you end up with. We've all experienced that, haven't we?
Yes.
Haven't we? So to say for no one to come with baggage is really an unfair statement. So I'm going to base my decision tonight solely on the qualifications of a manager to run this city, and I'm going to support Bob Bartolola.
But he's not the one with the ICMA accreditation.
I understand that. The first one.
First. Scott.
Again, I said before, Mr. Bartolotta and Ms. Samuelson, I believe, were the two top in my mind. And weighing both factors, I think that Ms. Samuelson's ties with the community and her approach to some of the questions and things kind of lends the upper hand in my mind between the two of them, first and second position.
Thank you. All right, I like Ken Fields and I like Bob Bartolotta only because of their experience in municipal government and to hit the ground running early next week. And I know that they live out of town, so they do have to look for housing. I think that's a normal statement. When anytime we moved, we had to look for housing. And I think I've said my piece on Ann. Very nice, great interviewer. I just don't know if she has the experience just to jump in. And Catherine Margolis, I think we've said it. So at this time, I think we would like to take a rating. A rating.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You have a piece of paper. I think the best way is your number one person would get a 4. Your number 2 person would get a 3. And then 2 and 1. Now this is public record. I would ask that you put your names or initials on this. We will give it to the city manager, city clerk for count. Now, do we want to base, is this contingent on a background check? Yes, background check. And what else?
Drug screening.
Drug screening?
We are a drug-free community.
Drug-free community? Background check?
We're a work-free drug place.
A work-free drug place. Hey, the other thing I would, somebody mentioned to me today, we'll have a number 1 and 2. If there is a problem with number 1, would we go to number 2? Or would we come back to the table?
That's why you rank ordering them, I think.
Okay, so if there is a problem with number 1, would it be then okay to go with number 2? Sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, let's do that.
I scribbled all over mine, okay?
Yeah, just put your name,
Okay.
Make sure you have your name on it.
I'm thinking.
bothering me studying.
You know, if you want to see his, he's got like this. He's got one over here, one over here. He might have a trough and a, here's your thought process. Well, here's your thought process. It's the bell curve.
Thank you. It's 4, 3, 2, 1. 4 is the high.
Yeah.
I did just the opposite. Okay, thank you.
So you're thinking number one, he's number one.
Yeah, thank you. Try this. 4 is 1, 1 is 4.
Yes.
Okay, also, while we're waiting for tabulation, if we could...
I want to recheck mine, too.
4 is first and 1 is last.
I didn't see it.
What's last? 4 is first.
Actually, let's make it.
I'm retarded.
Double checking. Do I need a date?
No, I messed up my 2s and 3s.
So this was yours, the bell curve.
Oh.
It's not a bell curve. Not sure what that is.
I let it do away with it. Oh, listen to his mind. All right, while we're waiting, I'd like to ask Mr. Beadle to discuss the draft contract with us so that we can fill in some of the X's and O's, please. Mr. Beadle?
Okay, I tried to hit some issues that I understood were issues. The first one relates to whether or not the individual would be hired as an independent contractor or as a temporary full-time employee. And it's written as a temporary full-time employee. I talked to Mike about issues as far as insurance and those types of things, and if something were to happen where litigation might ensue because of some action or some conduct, and basically his understanding was that by having the person as a temporary full-time employee, some issues regarding coverage and those types of things, and then obviously mutual indemnification and all those issues and making sure that those would be covered kind of go away. The only issue is, from a financial standpoint, is that by having the person as a W-2 versus a 1099, is that the city would have to cover the Medicare and Social Security match, which is 7.65%. That would be the only additional cost in addition to the salary that's included in here. If council wants me to go down the trail of figuring out whether or not that it wants to have this person as an independent contractor, I can go down that path. But that would be the only financial impact based on this way this is written. It would be the extra 7.65%.
But you think it's better to W-2 than
I just think it'd be cleaner. We don't have to worry about that issue on several levels.
That was the question I had. If it were an independent contractor, what kind of insurance? So I think in here it talks about they don't receive any other benefits in the personnel policy.
Correct.
So I'm fine with,
Correct.
fine with it.
Okay, I think it,
And then basically outlined in there that he'd be a full-time employee, and essentially and obviously has to provide the services in the charter and the codes regarding the duties of the city manager. Although the charter does say as directed by the city council, I went ahead and put that in here too, and that the person would have to attend all city council meetings, whether they're regular or special, and any other meetings that are directed by council.
The comment that says, in addition to those hours contemplated during each full-time work week, that means they're expected to put in full-time here at City Hall plus the hours for...
Correct.
Okay.
And I put in here, and I also put in here that, I don't remember where exactly I put in here, but everybody acknowledges that this will be an exempt employee for the wage laws, both state and federal. So,
Jim, there is also built in that the council, there is not a 30-day notice that council may.
That's later on in here. Yeah, I haven't got to that yet.
Sorry.
The one blank that I have in paragraph 2, well, paragraph 2 is that the person is going to work exclusively for the city during this period of time. If they need, and this essentially parrots what's in Mike's current one about the term employed shall not include if they want to do occasional teaching or writing or consulting or whatever, but obviously the person has to be full-time. The question is the first blank is how many months does the council want this to be for a full-time or for temporary full-time employee? It can't be more than 6 months.
We had agreed.
180 days.
180 days, right, which would be to 31 December, or no, it would be whenever the hire is.
I'll just put 180 days, and obviously council can terminate it before that.
Correct.
Okay. The next issue is compensation. If I'm going to, I guess, am I going to be talking with this person, or?
Yes, we'll find out who the person is, and then we'll look at the compensation and see if that's agreeable.
Okay.
Will this go forward as an offer then?
If council approves this tonight.
Okay.
And I don't,
Is that what
or we
this
could
turns
have.
into, an offer letter, or?
Yeah, it can.
Okay.
I mean, unless council wants to meet to approve it again tomorrow.
No.
I mean, I kind of assumed that would be the answer, so. And then, as indicated, as far as benefits and retirement, the person's not going to receive any benefits under the city's personnel policy at all. I did include, and council can direct that this be excluded, is I put a per diem in here that, if they go to, for instance, meetings outside the city on behalf of the city, that they would be reimbursed for whatever those per diems were. Is that okay? Did leave that in there?
I think so. Yes.
And then hours of work, we've already talked about that. And then termination, I didn't know how to deal with this. Mike had indicated that in one of his prior emails a while ago that there be some provision in there that that whoever is retained cannot quit or leave or voluntarily quit or leave within so many days of the effective date of the agreement. I don't know if council wants to put that in there or not, but that was why that was put in there. I mean, that way at least.
So you can't do it that way, but what you can do is you can, I think from a HR legal perspective, you can say they must give X many days notice. In other words, you could say 30, you could say 30 days notice.
Yeah, 30 is good.
Well, I do have that in here
That's in
someplace.
here.
I was going to say, you could just have that second sentence and it would work under I.
Well, actually, you can provide a contract that's for X amount of time.
Can you?
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time.
Okay.
It can be for a for a certain period of time.
Could be the 180 days. then.
Yeah, I mean, we have 180 days. And,
You're terminated. Yeah.
Mutually agreed to.
Well, we can just go with that.
I mean, I'm just responding to this. I mean, we can take the first sentence out, and as long as we have 30 days prior notice, that gives you plenty of time to address that if it comes up.
Works for me.
So just take the first sentence out.
And strike thereafter.
Right. Okay.
Was there any mention in here about fringe? Is he sick to vacation?
No, that was the one thing I put on my email when I sent it out is I don't know how council, I mean, whoever this individual is will be here for 6 months, and, obviously they're going to work during the week, and there's no provision in here for them to have any days off. So I don't know if council wants to allow them to have X number of days off per month or, during a normal work week, or to use a bad word, comp time.
No comp time.
No, but I mean that concept is what I'm talking. Yeah.
You should be able to have either one sick, maybe one
Well,
sick or
typical
vacation.
for
or
a brand new employee, it's 3.08 hours per pay period for vacation and 1.54 hours of sick time.
Right. So what's that, 5 hours?
Basically, it's 10 days vacation, 5 days sick per year. So for 6 months, it would be 5 days vacation, all right, and 2.5 days sick.
I mean, that's
But they would earn it per pay period,
per month.
per month.
Well,
So you want-
I have to be honest, I'm hoping that there's this wonderful relationship between the council and the city manager, and I think given the night meetings, flex time, I mean, I assume they're going to be in touch with us and let us know when they might like to take, you can't just ask the guy or woman to not take a holiday. So I don't have a problem with flex time as long as we're aware when that time is going to be.
What about holidays?
don't have to pay
They don't work, they don't work on a normal holiday?
On a legal holiday.
Legal holiday?
Yeah, we do have some flex holidays, but I'm not sure any of them would, there would be a couple that come
Again,
up.
that'd be part of the benefit, we just pay them for, everything, we pay them for holidays.
Can they? Are they off or do they get paid or both?
Well, considering the fact that whoever this person is would have to be available 24/7, I think it's only fair that you do that.
So they'd be paid for whatever legal holidays the city's closed? Okay.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Yes. Does that make sense?
And they accrue leave at
3.08 hours per pay period.
3.08 hours and 1.54.
1.54 per pay period for sick leave.
That's industry standard.
1.54?
Yeah.
So I can't hear because there's a lot of background noise.
Sorry.
Are we doing flex time or accrual
Well, when you
time?
say flex time, basically, they would forecast a certain amount of work, and they'd say, okay, and then I'm going to take the next 2 or 3 days off. Is that what you're talking about? In other words, in a particular pay period, they work 96 hours so that they could take 2 days off. Is that what you mean by flex time?
No, I'm saying, with all the night meetings, if they want to take off 3 days down the road, we don't hold them hostage because they're accruing whatever. Because the contract is between us and this interim city manager. So allow some flexibility for this person to have a life and have a family other than accruing, because it is a demanding job and it's very time consuming.
Who does the city manager ask for time off? Pardon? Who does the city manager ask for when they want time off?
Well, in terms of scheduled vacation time, it's, you just schedule it, but, my contract states that I can make reasonable adjustment in recognition of the extra hours that I work. You're probably going to want something a little tighter for a 6-month period, because the new manager will work a lot of hours, and if what's reasonable to one person may not be reasonable to the other. So you may want to try to define that somehow so that there is no problem.
How about with approval of the city council?
That's what we had talked about.
You could do that.
What's that?
Approval of city council.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Great.
Is that for all leave or is that in addition to the 3.08?
That would be for all leave.
That'd be for, yeah, that would be it, rather
They wouldn't-
advise the 3.08.
They wouldn't accrue.
Okay, that's just want to make sure. And then it provides that the council can terminate for any reason or no reason. And basically, you would owe through whatever the effective date of the termination is.
That's correct.
There is a provision in here, because I don't know what other agreements they have. There's basically that by signing this agreement and agreeing to provide the services under this contract, that they're saying that it will not violate any terms of any other existing contracts or agreements that they may have with some other party. Indemnification, this is actually what's in Mike's contract right now. Bonding, I don't know, I mean, if the interim city manager needs to be bonded, I don't know, I'm assuming Mike's bonded. So I don't know if that's going to be a requirement of the position, but I guess that would be an extra expense now that I think about it, but that would be
We
it.
add them to our insurance coverage.
Yeah. And then notices, the rest of it's pretty much boilerplate, just the notices, binding effect, assignability, documents, representation, that they've had the opportunity to seek counsel and that I'm representing only the city in this matter, attorney's fees for prevailing party, to be governed by the laws of the state of Florida. Any venue will be in Brevard County if there's any litigation. Normally, a contract is construed against the maker of the contract. There's a provision in here basically that says that it's not going to be construed against the maker. And then just savings clause and a headings clause, and that's it.
Thank you. Jim, that's good. I have the results, and those of you that thought you were going home early, you may want to make a call. We have a tie. What else would you expect? Mr. Bartolotta and Ms. Samuelson each have 15 points. Mr. Fields 13, Ms. Margolis 7.
Well, so, can I make a suggestion?
Sure. Yes.
Well, one of the ways to look at it is to go with the person who has the maximum number of max numbers. I mean, that's kind of how you do a golf handicap thing, right? You go with the best holes. And really, or we can make a motion.
We could revote with a 2-1.
We could.
Maximum number of max numbers.
In other words, the maximum numbers of 4.
This would be best ball amongst the 5 of us.
That's right.
Oh.
City manager best ball.
Why don't we just revote?
Let's revote.
Why don't we let the citizens vote?
Well, usurping your authority, Mr.
The exact same
Okay,
way.
there would be,
I don't know.
there, Mr. Bartolotta, Ms. Samuelson, a 2 and a 1.
2 being the highest.
Yes, 2 being the highest.
Put your name on it.
I do, because I can't go.
So 2 is our...
2 is high.
Okay.
Make sure you,
There's
yes.
a lot of people that say they play golf but can't play golf either.
Oh, that's true. As long as, you have your name on it, Lloyd, did you sign it?
I did.
He signed it.
I think I did.
Okay. Here.
If there's one unsigned, it's mine.
Do you want to look at it again?
I remember how I voted.
And then you offer the contract to the first one, and if they don't accept it, you go to the second one?
That's, or if, yes, on the 10th, yes, that would be it. We'll have a number 1 and number 2. I think that would be the best way to have that.
But I mean,
Speaking out of turn.
She is. But,
you offer that contract, or do you negotiate for, like what I'm saying is...
we're going to offer the contract. If it comes back, then we'll look at the contract if we need to.
Can you discuss that?
Yes, we did.
I don't think it's citizen comment time.
Yeah.
The citizens that are out of order. Where's the police officer when they need him?
Yeah, where is the police officer when you need him?
Okay, at this time, the votes are cast. Mr. Bartolotta, 7, Ms. Ann Samuelson, 8. So, at this time, Ms. Ann Samuelson, we would like to congratulate her on being selected by the council as interim city manager, contingent on background investigation, drug test, and contract negotiations.
With salary, you didn't address the salary.
Salary that she has asked for was $8,000 with nothing else.
Okay, just want to make sure, because
Is that okay?
talking about that earlier. So.
Well, we didn't, because there were 2, is that,
different numbers, but
Yeah.
the first was 8,000 and nothing.
do I remember that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down.
Is that,
No, actually, she questioned about benefits.
well, but you have some of those.
Yeah, I'll have whatever we would offer, and we're offering.
What, now, should we make a motion? Do we need a motion for this, or should we, or is it, okay,
No, the tally.
salary, is that okay?
That's what you wanted.
Okay, I do have those votes, they will be available. Any other issues before the council?
Just timing. Are you going to get a hold of her tonight, tomorrow?
I was going to try calling her tomorrow.
Okay.
I had some quick, since we've had the same city manager for 27 years coming up, accountability, do we need to do a weekly report, an update of what's going on with the performance or something like that, us as the board with a very brand new person and not knowing a whole lot about them? Do we need to have something like that? Instead of just go, well, let's just go do your thing and we'll check back with us. If you got any questions, I don't know.
But I don't think we need to have a meeting to do that. I think we can do that via email. Okay. Just ask her to present to us her what she's done for the week.
Okay,
Now, in the agreement?
We kind of nice, yeah.
Now, may I also ask a question, since we are going to appoint Ms. Samuelson tomorrow, Mr. Karate status? Because we do have an ordinance that we will discuss next Wednesday, and we have a separation agreement that has not been voted on.
I thought we talked about that, though, in the last one, that in the transition agreement. Administratively.
Actually, I have a draft.
City attorney, but that's a draft separation that we haven't voted on, and also ordinance.
I mean, you haven't seen it yet either.
Oh,
so that's what I'm saying. I brought it this evening, and if anybody has any, I believe it addresses Mike's proposal, some of the comments that I have gotten through the woodwork, so to speak, from some of the council members, and they're all in here. I just want to know if there's something else that council wants in here. And then that way it can be presented and hopefully approved on next Wednesday.
What is the city manager's status in the meantime?
I was thinking it was administratively.
That's the way it's set up in the agreement.
That's what I thought we discussed.
But the agreement has not, is that starting the 20th?
It's a meeting.
It's up to council.
We said, I thought we said that it was effective upon, I thought we said that it was effective upon the naming of a interim city manager.
We did, but we haven't, I think we haven't seconded that.
Well, you don't actually, well, naming it doesn't, I mean, you have to actually have them sign the agreement first.
Right.
If it's not on, because we're going to have the city manager until the agreement's signed.
Right.
Or if council wants to have the effective date at some other date other than the date that both parties sign. Such as Wednesday, I mean, just.
Yeah, that might be.
Like a transition period?
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to suggest putting it all on Wednesday, at the beginning of the agenda, the ordinance, the separation agreement, and the signing of this, and then I would depart after that particular item, and then Ms. Samuelson would be the interim city manager, take over at that point. I have prepared substantial briefing documents, so I'd like to begin working with her, whether it's, after I depart or before she comes on board. It's going to be some part of that transition, and,
Can we make her agreement effective, like whenever she says, like tomorrow, and have that period as a transition period between Mike and her? Does that make sense?
I have one other question before I forget. I'm sorry, I've interrupted, but who's going to be executing the agreement on behalf of the city? Mayor?
But anyway, does that make sense?
But if is that the separation agreement?
That was the agreement for Ms. Samuelson.
We've discussed it.
If Ann can have that signed by Friday, then I can begin next week just coming in the transition at the agreement, and I will, devote several hours a day to working with her if that's her choice, and Friday would be my last day.
There's also going to be at least 1 day lag time in there no matter what you do because of the drug testing and the background check.
Yeah, so I think next Wednesday is fine. It's a scheduled meeting, it's a regular council meeting. We'll
And then it's acceptable if I depart after my items on, and
Yes.
then take over.
But I would like to, if it's a day or two or whatever, because I would like to get her with you for that period of time before Wednesday.
Oh, I will. Or if she needs me after, I'm available by the agreement for 1 year.
Okay.
Thank you. I thank everyone for their comments. I thank you for coming and for going through the process with us. I thank the council for a great job and thank you very much. And we,
Can I ask the council, I spent the time with the applicants. Is it all right with the council if I tell them what the results? Or would you want it in writing? Because they're all still in the air.
I wouldn't mind if you called them. We called the other people from last night, I think, and so would that
That's
be?
acceptable to everyone?
That's okay.
I think it's important to let, I guess, Mr. Bartolona know that if something happens with Ann, that he's seconding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We will see everyone next Wednesday. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, council.
Oh, you gave me those two. Oh, that's from my, I'm sorry. Got it.